Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Overwatch comes to Marvel. Chapter 41. This gunshot sounded very real, but Luo Ning found himself still standing here firmly. Then, Nick Fury and Coulson got up from the ground and stared at him wonderingly. Those masked people also took off their masks. Luo Ning exclaimed, "What? Are you acting to lie to me? In fact, what he wants to say is a bunch of scum. I have seen through your tricks a long time ago, and what you are doing now is just playing tricks. Mr. Luo Ning, I hope you can understand." Nick Fury handed him a white handkerchief, pointed to his forehead, and said, "Wipe this up." Luo Ning took it dissatisfied, and wiped it, like red dye, stained on the handkerchief. "Director Fury, you really know how to play. If I had a heart attack, I might have been scared to death." Nick Fury said seriously, "I know you haven't. Then can I leave now? I really don't want to stay in this place for a second, who knows what tricks you will play later." Luo Ning said angrily. "Mr. Luo Ning, everything we do is for the safety of the country and the world. Please forgive me if I offend you." It was rare for Coulson to lower his attitude and speak comfortably. Luo Ning said, "I don't understand your good intentions, what else can I do? Can you dismantle S.H.I.E.L.D.? After confirming that Ronan was not a threat, Nick Fury was temporarily relieved, but it does not mean that Ronan has nothing to do with Soldier 76 and Winston, and S.H.I.E.L.D. will continue to pay attention to it in the future. Agent Coulson, send Mr. Ronan back," Nick Fury said. Coulson nodded, then stretched out his right arm in a gesture of asking, "Please, Mr. Luo Ning." Before leaving, Luo Ning put the bright red handkerchief on the corner of the table, and praised, "The props are very realistic, and there is no problem in making a movie." Then he glanced at the agents around him. The acting skills of the agents are also top-notch. "If you want to enter the showbiz, you can find me. It's absolutely fine to act in your true colors," as Luo Ning said. Nick Fury twitched the corner of his mouth. It is undoubtedly an insult to the agent to let a real agent play the agent in the movie. Those agents also felt that Luo Ning was humiliating them, so they all showed hatred. "Slip away." Ronan ran out in a hurry. These agents were simply boring, and the old agent Nick Fury was even more boring, and he couldn't make any jokes. In contrast, Coulson is more pleasing to the eye, although there is always a professional smile on his face, whether it is fake or not. At least give him a good look, and those guys want to eat him, they have no professional qualities. "Mr. Luo Ning, if you dare to make jokes about agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the future, I promise you will be very sad." At this moment, the smile on Coulson's face looked very sinister, and Ronan decided to take back his previous thoughts. Can't be offended, can't be offended. Luo Ning avoided it, and at the same time, he made a decision that even if he encountered huge troubles and his life was in danger, he would not ask these guys for help. Sitting in Coulson's car, Luo Ning suddenly patted his forehead. He left in such a hurry that he didn't even have time to think about the transportation. Why didn't he take a plane? It was fast and steady, without seeing Coulson's hypocritical face. "Sir, you know, Soldier 76 is very much like my hero, and for that reason, I, who doesn't like movies very much, went to see Soldier 76 feet in theaters." It was boring along the way, and Coulson felt bored, so he found a topic to chat about, and it wasn't a forced chat. Soldier 76 was indeed very similar to his idol, the super soldier full of love and justice with strong beliefs, the one who used to be alone, the man who broke into the Hydra base. They are all super soldiers with strong physical fitness, they have made indelible contributions to world peace, and they all have justice in their hearts. From Soldier 76, he can always see the shadow of that man. Chatting is one part, and the other part also hopes to get more words out of Luo Ning's mouth. Revealing one's true feelings to a person whose identity is not yet clear is already a big taboo for an agent, but he hopes to use this to open up Ronan's chatterbox, so as to get more information, which can be regarded as I am willing to give up. Besides, few people know who he is talking about. Luo Ning was playing with his mobile phone wholeheartedly. He only gave a faint "oh" when he heard the words, and then continued to press the screen frantically. During these 3 boring hours, only games could make him spend happily, and any other means could not help him. It's like a year, especially having an awkward chat with this hypocritical guy. As for the hero in Coulson's mind, anyone can figure out who it is with his ass, the man who is known as Marvel's I can't help but think of Hitaki's split. Both of them have to do 2 tricks to force a split no matter whether the enemy is weak or strong. Naruto has Hitaki Kakashi singled out Pain Tiandao, and Marvel has Captain America hard-hitting Thanos. The split is worthy of the name. Oh, Coulson instantly had the urge to step on the accelerator. He already expressed his admiration for Soldier 76. As the producer and screenwriter of Soldier 76, can't he say a word? Even a thank you is better than an oh. At this moment, he completely dismissed the idea of chatting with Luo Ning, looked back, saw Luo Ning playing games, and suddenly became angry. How old is Nima and still playing mobile games? Can you pursue it a little bit? This boss is really crazy. Luo Ning died in this level for the 3rd time, and couldn't help but swear. Coulson shook his head, expressing deep sorrow and envy at the same time. Why can he write such an excellent script after being so obsessed with playing games? If this is seen by those screenwriters who study scripts all the time, they will probably doubt their lives and even hang themselves. Drive steadily, Luo Ning yelled, braked, and leaned forward, which seriously affected his rhythm of playing games. Coulson was full of black lines, making him look like a full-time driver. If the director hadn't told him to send Luo Ning home safely, he wouldn't have bothered to make this trip. Not to mention being tired, he would still be angry with this guy. He will never do such a job in the future. Dealing with this guy is really tiring. He is even more ignorant than Tony Stark. I knew Luo Ning a long time ago, and then learned a lot of bad things from Luo Ning. Fortunately, 2/3 of the journey has passed, and the torment is about to end. Coulson breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately frowned. Why did he feel that the cars on both sides were sandwiching him again? As he was driving, the 2 cars passed by. Realizing that something was wrong, he hurriedly speeded up to get rid of the cars on both sides, but the cars on both sides also speeded up immediately. There was a car in the wrong direction in front, and the cars on both sides followed up to cooperate with the car in front to sandwich him, and the car behind was chasing his butt, pinching him tightly and immobilizing him. Not good. Coulson's expression changed suddenly, and he took out his pistol. Luo Ning was still playing with his mobile phone, and muttered, "Let's go." "Why don't you go?" There was no response for a while, and the car didn't move. He raised his head and saw the scene outside the car window, and his heart skipped a beat. Could this be another SHIELD play? A few cars were stuck in the middle of the road, and the horns of the surrounding vehicles kept coming and going. The traffic jam was the most annoying thing. However, when a few people got out of the car with guns in their hands, everyone else tried their best to stay away from here. The ghost knows what happened to them. It is impossible to make a movie. How can there be such a down-to-earth studio? Oh, shit, Coulson swears, and is stuck in several cars, unable to move. Knowing that this trip may be unsafe, I came here to defend against the Chevrolet Suburban, which is comparable to a tank. It turned out to be useless, and the turtle shell would be broken sooner or later. The gunman fired a few shots at them first. The bullets hit the hard glass of the car, but they couldn't penetrate it. The car is gone. Counting on this car to protect them is better than counting on a few thunderbolts from the sky to kill those guys. Agent Coulson, is the drama overdone? Luo Ning stared at Coulson, dizzy from several rockets. Those guys didn't seem to be afraid of killing them. The corner of Coulson's mouth twitched. It would be fine if it was an act. When the car is blown away, I will run away and report to the chief so that he can send someone to rescue you. Luo Ning stared. This teammate is too pedantic, so why not try to fight with these people first, see if it is possible to take him away with him, and directly say such ruthless words, conscience won't it hurt. Then Coulson looked around. I believe they won't hurt you, because you are a very valuable person. Jealousy will separate the hostages, your colleagues will harm you, and you are also with Soldier 76 and Wens there is an inexplicable relationship, so those evil forces also desire to have you, because owning you is equivalent to owning those two superheroes, but any normal person will think that you are the leader of those two. After he finished speaking, he looked at Luo Ning again. So, you should behave well there and delay the time as much as possible, so that at least you won't suffer from flesh and blood. Agent Coulson, you believe it? I don't believe it. You must protect my safety. I believe you can. You are a level 8 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you must be very capable. Luo Ning waited eagerly. Rather than transforming, he hoped that Coulson could find a way to solve the immediate troubles. You believe it? I don't believe it. How can I be the opponent of that group of people alone? I remember that there is a military art in the East that says, 36 tactics are the best. Of course this is just a stopgap measure. We will come to rescue you. Maybe we don't need us. Your super soldiers and orangutan warriors will be ahead of us. Coulson said very seriously. To be honest, Luo Ning wanted to transform into Soldier 76 and beat him up. This guy is such a thief. He can run faster than anyone else when he gets into trouble. Boom. A missile completely shattered the window of the car, and Coulson jumped out, nimbly shuttled between the vehicles, used the vehicle to block the bullets, and left safely after tossing and turning for a few times. Luo Ning blinked his eyes. His talent was all about escaping, right? Luo Ning raised his hand sensibly. Coulson can slip faster than a rabbit. He can only rely on himself, but he can't transform yet. That guy Coulson has definitely not left yet. He must be hiding in the dark and watching. If he transforms now, he will be invited back to drink tea by S.H.I.E.L.D. immediately after finishing dealing with the enemies in front of him. Seeing that he didn't resist, those people took him to the car, and the two of them sat between him and stretched out their salty hands to him, well, in fact, to check whether he was carrying a murder weapon. Long live Hydra. After staying silent for a long time, Luo Ning said this out of the blue, and the two people around him immediately cast suspicious looks. Strangely, Hydra has been keeping a low profile recently. Except for the insiders, everyone who knew about Hydra is dead. Hydra has been accumulating strength recently, and it has not yet reached the point of openly confronting the government. Seeing the reaction of these two guys, Luo Ning nodded secretly. It really was Hydra. And within S.H.I.E.L.D., there are people from Hydra, so they know his movements so clearly. It's really a good plan, but it's a pity. No matter how awesome Hydra is, it is also composed of a group of ordinary people, and its ideological realm is just like that. It would never have occurred to him that Soldier 76 and Winston were transformed by him. The term transformation is because he is too advanced. Are you confused? Luo Ning smiled and turned to the two strong men beside him. Be honest, these people obviously don't have any decision-making power. They are dead men who follow Hydra wholeheartedly. Why are they dead men? Because once they are arrested, they will commit suicide by taking poison, and they will resolutely not disclose any information about Hydra. The reason is that there is nothing to say, so I am sorry. The vehicle drove away from the bustling urban area and came to the inaccessible suburbs. He took out a pile of air from his crotch, startled the two people around him, and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that there was nothing there. However, in the next moment, their eyes widened, a rifle appeared out of nowhere in their empty hands, and blue flames sprayed out, and when they looked up and saw Luo Ning's transformation, they were shocked fell down. Fool. Ronan fired 2 more shots at the driver before jumping out of the car. Seeing Luo Ning fleeing, the vehicles following him immediately surrounded him and blocked Luo Ning's escape route. Those people got out of the car and couldn't believe it when they saw Soldier 76. Where did this guy come from? They didn't have any confidence, and they had heard many stories about Soldier 76. Although there was only one person, he was an army, and he couldn't be provoked. But they can't escape. Even if they die, they have to complete the task. Luo Ning frowned. More than a dozen people surrounded him, and there was a bazooka. What if he was injured? Although the possibility is very small, this possibility cannot be ruled out. There is no need to worry about transforming into Winston. Isn't it a surprise? Isn't it a surprise? Let me surprise you again. As soon as the words fell, Soldier 76 transformed into Winston, a gentle gorilla. When those people saw it, it was as if they had seen a ghost, and their hands holding the guns were shaking. This was the first time they had the idea of running away. Is this guy a monster? It's not that exaggerated that a person suddenly becomes a gorilla. It's inhuman. Hit me hard. The group of Hydra guys are still head iron. They don't seem to understand Winston's power, or have confidence in it. Shield activated. Ronan places a barrier emitter that creates a blue bubble-like force field that absorbs damage. Whether it is a bullet or a rocket, it will not be able to break it for a while. You must know that even the French chicken needs 5 shots to break the barrier. After shooting the rocket, the man immediately took out a box from the car, filled it with rockets, reloaded it and fired it endlessly. The sixth rocket was launched, and fine cracks finally appeared in the barrier. What about Winston? I don't believe you can hide forever. Seeing that the barrier was about to shatter, the man showed a smug smile. The so-called superhero was nothing more than that, and the bazooka taught him to be a man. Do you really think I can only hide? Luo Ning smiled. He hid here just to try how long this barrier can last. He also has a certain idea of how to use it in the future. Now he almost knows that ordinary bullets are basically indestructible, and the sixth round of the bazooka will have cracks. Left and right can be completely broken. Ronan activated the jetpack, and Winston fell from the sky, causing them to sit on the ground with shock. Next came Winston's home field, time for electrotherapy. In ancient times, there was Professor Yang, a teenager addicted to electric networks, and later, there was Winston, a follower of electric claws. In the secluded suburbs, the melodious sound of sizzling came out. The Tesla cannon might be a bit far-fetched to deal with the abomination, but it was still very effective against these ordinary people. The Heepa believers all fell to the ground. After making sure that they were all angry, Luo Ning drove away. He planned to make up a few shots, but after thinking about it, he decided to forget it. The electric current of the Tesla cannon is simply unbearable for mortals. Enough to make them die. He doesn't think he is ruthless, but thinks that he is a very caring and kind person, but this does not mean that he will be merciful to the enemy, and he will show a decisive side when dealing with those who plot evil. This is for himself responsible. Shield. Coulson ran to Nick Fury's office in a panic, panting, "The director is not good, Ronan has been taken away. As for who it is, there is no clue yet." Nick Fury frowned. "We must not let him fall into the hands of others." Coulson continued. "Because there are too many enemies, I only installed trackers on 2 of the vehicles. Now I can call them up to check the positions of these 2 vehicles." When he called out the location, he found a car parked in the suburbs of the east side of Manhattan, and another car drove back to the original location. Looking at the movement, it seemed to be heading for Luo Ning's residence. Coulson looked at Fury suspiciously, and Fury pretended to be deep and said, "Obviously, it was Soldier 76 who saved him again." Coulson actually thought of this, but what he didn't understand was why Soldier 76 didn't show up when Ronan faced a dead end in S.H.I.E.L.D. What's so tricky about it? But Fury waved his hand. "Obviously, Ronan saw that we were acting, so he was cooperating with us." Hearing this, Coulson nodded. "The possibility is very high. He has seen Luo Ning's cautiousness before." "So what do we do?" Coulson asked for instructions. Fury leaned on his chin and thought for a moment, then said, "Leave him alone for now. He is unlikely to have any impact on us in the short term. We still have to build that team as soon as possible. Iron Man and Hulk, we have to find a way to recruit. Hydra, you are looking for your own death." Luo Ning walked back and forth in the living room angrily. He didn't expect Hydra to target him so early. Do you really think he is a soft persimmon? Originally, he wanted to wait for him to be sure before tearing up his face with Hydra, but now it seems that he will not be able to wait until that day, but now his strength is still not enough, at most he can protect himself. With a large number of enemies, Soldier 76 and Winston tends to get into trouble. At present, the filming of the Iron Man movie is about to be completed. As for the hero in the next movie, it is not up to him to decide. In the study room, in the drawer of the desk, when I opened it, I saw a notebook, which recorded the script of Overwatch heroes. Every time he took a script, the next script would be produced when he wanted to shoot the next movie. With an uneasy mood, Luo Ning opened it and frowned. "Reinhardt." In the game, Reinhardt's positioning is very accurate. He is a strong shield for his teammates to help his teammates resist damage, but he often plays the sledgehammer as a warrior who charges into battle. In fact, the sledgehammer is very strong in melee combat. With the ultimate move, he often takes 3 kills and 4 kills. The premise is to hit it accurately, but most of the time he misses it, so he is sprayed badly by his teammates. In the game, considering the need to cooperate with his teammates, he was forced to raise his shield, but in reality, Reinhardt is undoubtedly a powerful warrior. Wearing heavy armor and wielding a sledgehammer, he is invincible. The only flaw of a high-level hero is that his flexibility is not high. After flipping through, Ronan put the script back and locked it, and had to design an Easter egg for Iron Man to call out the next film, Reinhardt. I took a blank piece of paper and laid it out, and it was time to rack my brains again. The Easter egg is only a few tens of seconds, at most 1 or 2 minutes, and there is not much need to be presented. First design a little interesting plot, and then reveal a little clue of the next movie. The Easter egg of Winston, that's pretty good. So this morning, Luo Ning was designing Easter eggs, trying to be the best. At noon, Luo Ning took a deep breath, picked up the paper and looked at it, nodded with satisfaction. This Easter egg is not bad. Grab a bite to eat, then ask Thomas to take him to the set. Just at meal time, a group of actors were eating, and Luo Ning saw a flamboyant man sitting there with his legs crossed, eating a hamburger in the temporary shed, chatting with other well-known actors around him without saying a word, mostly actresses. I hope I didn't disturb your meal. Luo Ning walked over and said with a smile. Oh, Mr. Ronan. Seeing him coming, the actors all showed surprised expressions, and then stood up to say hello. Mr. Luo Ning has never been to the set for several months. The sun rose from the west today. Do you want a hamburger? Tony was still sitting there, gnawing on a hamburger and asking. No need. Seeing the hamburger built so high, Luo Ning was intimidated. By the way, how is the progress? It's almost over, but the post-editing process will take a while. Tony said, it's really tiring to shoot a movie. Dozens of shots for one scene. Fortunately, I acted in my true colors, otherwise hundreds of times would be possible. Luo Ning smiled. Do you think making movies is fun? By the way, where is Director Hopkins? Tony pointed to the shed opposite. There. Okay, you continue to eat. Luo Ning smiled at them, and then found Director Hopkins, who was lying on his back in a chair with his eyes closed. Excuse me, Director Hopkins. Hearing the sound, Hopkins was shocked, got up and saw Luo Ning, rubbed his eyes, and after confirming that it was correct, he said enthusiastically, Mr. Luo Ning, you are here. In fact, he was thinking about asking him for help, so he didn't believe that Luo Ning would come to the set to visit the set. Luo Ning came here once when filming Soldier, 76 inches before, and it was for the Easter egg. Come. Well, the Easter egg is designed, please add it to the end of the video. Luo Ning took out the piece of paper. Sure enough, Director Hopkins put on his glasses and read it carefully, thought for a while and raised a few small questions, and then communicated with him again before finalizing it. I was very shocked. I didn't expect that before the filming of Iron Man was finished, Luo Ning had already started preparing for the next film. It seemed that the script had been written to a close, and it would be filmed soon. It's so productive like a sow. No other film company is so crazy. I didn't expect Overwatch Pictures to earn so much money and not be satisfied. It never stopped and kept moving forward. 2 films a year is already fast, but Ronan seems to be too slow, can't wait for 2 movies to start shooting at the same time. To be honest, Luo Ning really has this idea, but shooting at the same time means that the difference in release time will not be too big, so that the 2 films of his own will compete for the market, and the money earned by a single film will be less. The feeling will be reduced, so it is still necessary to wait a few months. Activating heroes is important, but making money is more important. Without money, nothing can be done. There are already a lot of comments about Iron Man on the internet, and I feel a little impatient. Luo Ning estimated that if nothing unexpected happens, the trailer will be released in a month, and now, Reinhardt can actually be filmed. Time does not wait. So he contacted other directors. Director Hopkins had to rest for at least 2 months after directing Iron Man. After doing this, Luo Ning became distressed. He has always been passive, and others will always trouble him. When will he take the initiative? In fact, he just wanted to be a salted fish president and live a life of indifference to the world, but there were always some guys who regarded him as a thorn in his side, and now that he was being targeted by the big villain Hydra, even he felt a little powerless. Today's Hydra has no base. They are distributed all over the place, infiltrated into S.H.I.E.L.D., and even penetrated into the government. It can be said that High Claw believers are everywhere. Even if he wanted to take the initiative to destroy Hydra, he didn't know where to start. Killing dozens or hundreds of HIPAA believers would not help, and it was impossible to fundamentally eliminate Hydra. The Hydra is endless and endless. As long as the foundation is still there, it will always exist. The only way is to strengthen yourself. As long as you become stronger, you can ignore the Hydra organization. After all, Hydra is just a group of mortals, like Thor and Hulk. There is no need to worry about Hydra. Hydra did not have the guts to provoke these two. At present, he is too weak, and he is not strong enough. When he reaches the level of Thor Hulk, the troubles caused by Hydra will naturally disappear. Then get up first. As long as the wretched growth does not waver, it can survive, and wait until it is fully developed before giving the Hydra a fatal blow. Even if it is impossible to completely eliminate it, it will eliminate by then. Chop off one head and grow two more. After the wings are full, he will cut off all the 9 heads, and let the Hydra lose a layer of skin if he does not die. How can the Hydra turn the sky upside down? S.H.I.E.L.D. investigated those who chased and intercepted Ronan, but found no clues, like a group of desperados without identity. This made them puzzled. Who would dare to fight against S.H.I.E.L.D.? Although they thought it might be that, it was too unrealistic. There has been no Hydra in recent years. How could Hydra come out for no reason, so they temporarily considered to be Ronan's enemy? There are many people who want Luo Ning's life. After all, Luo Ning has taken up too much of the cake in the film market. If some people can't do it openly, they will do it secretly. This possibility is still high. Go as king. These days, Luo Ning doesn't go out of the gate, and he is an otaku with peace of mind, playing games and snacks as companions every day, and his life is very comfortable. Those film award ceremonies are all for the vice president of the company, for which Lucy complained to him for a long time. But there is no way. Who made him so hated by others? There will be a bloodbath when he goes out. The most important thing is that he can't transform in the eyes of everyone, otherwise S.H.I.E.L.D. will definitely annoy him until he collapses. At home, he didn't have such worries. Even if Hydra came to trouble him, he could deal with it calmly. With the 2 transformation forms of Soldier 76 and Winston, it was enough to protect himself. But no one came to mess with him, and this period of time passed peacefully until Iron Man was finished, and the post-production took about a month. The Iron Man trailer was released soon, and there was another heated discussion on various forums. It has been 5 months since the premiere of Winston last time. Overwatch Films always releases a film every 6 months. This time, it is a little bit unaccustomed to everyone, but everyone is undoubtedly excited and wants to watch it. Let's see what kind of sparks can be created between Iron Man and Overwatch. At this time, the Douban forum has a tendency to be screened by Iron Man, and other forum moderators are also extremely troubled, because every time this time comes, no matter if it is a game forum, a music forum, or any other forum, it will be consistently blocked. Watching movies swipe the screen, and the moderator once suspected that he had entered a movie forum. Occasionally, a post related to the forum popped up, and the moderator simply didn't know whether to cry or laugh, as if he was managing a movie forum. In movie forums, you guys can even talk about XXX. The script written by Luo Ning followed the plot of Iron Man on Earth. At the beginning, Tony Stark was an arms dealer. He was conceited but smart, and established the Stark Group's strong position as the #1 arms supplier to the US military. However, after a kidnapping incident, he deeply realized that the weapons made by the group harm to human beings. After making armor and escaping, he decided not to make arms, but was strongly opposed by shareholder Obadiah Stane, and a battle between iron bumps began. At that time, only fragments were reported in the news, but Ronan integrated them together to make a sci-fi blockbuster. It stands to reason that this trailer can attract the audience's attention. In fact, this is indeed the case, and Douban has received rave reviews. One of the most popular posts discussed was actually a post by a small bean. Titled, "Compared to Soldier, 76 feet and Winston, Iron Man makes me feel relatable and real." Before the movie was released, they knew the existence of Iron Man, so it was undoubtedly a bold attempt to put Iron Man on the screen, abandoning future technology, but adding a touch of reality. If the filming is not good, it will be over. Luo Ning didn't want to make Iron Man reach a new high. In fact, he didn't know the bottom line. As long as he could reach the results of Soldier 76, he would be satisfied, and it could be regarded as an explanation for Tony. On the other side, Tony was watching the trailer repeatedly, with a big smile on his face. He couldn't see that he was quite talented as an actor, so he was complacent about it. The effect has met his expectations, and I believe this movie will definitely make everyone like it. Luo Ning also believes that the box office of this movie will not be bad. Iron Man's own traffic, coupled with the original traffic of Overwatch pictures, may have the hope of surpassing Soldier, 76 inches and Winston. As for the connection between Iron Man and Overwatch, Ronan left a very vague ending behind. Iron Man intends to join Overwatch, but he is still hesitating. In fact, Ronan considers that Tony may not have too much time to make a movie. He only planned to let Iron Man make a cameo at the beginning. Marvel has the Avengers, and Overwatch also has Overwatch. When the individual movies of the Overwatch series of heroes are released, the Overwatch team should be established. At that time, it is okay for Iron Man to show his face occasionally. Anyway, Tony, now I am too addicted to being an actor. Browsing, I saw the post of the Dodie Strongman again. Last time he played Winston hard, and now he played Iron Man even more outrageously. With all kinds of flags, Luo Ning just smiled after reading it, hoping that the movie after the release, I will not slap myself in the face. The day before the premiere of Iron Man, Tony excitedly called Ronan and asked him to watch a movie with him, but Ronan refused this time. He is very insecure now, whether it is for himself or for others. He did not expose yourself to the public eye. Don't worry, if you don't go to the cinema this time, it's within our group. Tony said. No, seeing his firm attitude, Tony didn't say any more, knowing that Luo Ning had been targeted again recently, and it was indeed dangerous to come out. Luo Ning is not alone. Tomorrow Lucy and Thomas will accompany him to watch Iron Man at home, which can be regarded as watching the movie with fans. To be honest, Luo Ning wants to go out and watch movies with fans, and doesn't like being forced to stay at home, but he doesn't want to cause trouble because of this. When he is strong enough, he must let Hydra know, not because he is afraid, but he was brewing. When the time is right, we must let the Hydra end up with all 9 heads cut off. On the premiere day of Iron Man, the major theaters were full, and it was hard to find a ticket. Some people were willing to pay high prices to buy tickets from others. Luo Ning naturally didn't know the madness outside when he stayed at home, but he could also know that the premiere day of Iron Man was as popular as Winston by browsing his mobile phone. At this time Lucy came, and Luo Ning went up to greet her with a smile, but was met with her eyes. What a jerk. Luo Ning admits that he has been a bit indifferent to the company during this time. In fact, he can't be blamed for this. If he is to be blamed, he is too handsome. He is so handsome that he arouses the envy of countless people, so that he dare not go out for fear of being beaten. Of course, Lucy would not believe his nonsense, but said with full of resentment, Mr. Luo Ning, you are a little comfortable as a shopkeeper. You don't care about everything for a day, just stay at home and enjoy it. Luo Ning could only wave his hand at this. You see, I don't care about anything. In fact, I really care about the company. In order to verify the strength of Blizzard Entertainment, I bought all their standalone masterpieces and experienced them one by one. I have only played less than half of the games now, but this company gives me the feeling that it is reliable, very reliable. The quality of the game is very high. I'm relieved to give them the right to use the movie image of Overwatch heroes. Luo Ning gave a thumbs up. Lucy said angrily, so that's why you don't go to the company, play games, who are you going to give these high-sounding reasons? Okay, drink a glass of iced Coke, and put the fire away. Luo Ning handed her a glass of Binkuoluo, hoping that this cool drink could suppress the anger in her heart. I'm just an assistant. I have to take care of everything in the company, but you play games at home all day. No one will feel good. Lucy said, holding a cup. Actually, I've been on the set all this time, and you know that I'm the screenwriter, so I have to personally check some plots, otherwise I won't be able to shoot that feeling. After all, writing depends on people's imagination, and the director may not be able to understand my writing mood, so I can only stay on the set. Luo Ning pointed to his dark circles. Did you see that? In order to improve the deficiencies of the script, I suffered from dark circles all day. Of course he would not tell Lucy that the dark circles under his eyes were caused by him staying up all night playing games. In order to win Lucy's favor, he could only use this kind of tactic, but he always felt sorry for him, but in order to continue to be a hands-off shopkeeper, he also can only play the emotional card. Otherwise, there will be no time to play games in the future, which is simply the most painful punishment in the human world. Luo Ning's dark circles were clearly visible. Lucy felt a little distressed when she saw it, and then said gently, "Mr. Luo Ning didn't expect you to be so tired. It seems that I blamed you. I apologize for my unreasonable behavior just now." Luo Ning smiled freely. "It's nothing, it's all my job, and I should also handle some company affairs, but I'm too busy with this and I don't have time. If you do it for me, then you won't be in vain do it, and your hard work will pay off." The subtext is of course that the salary is huge, so Lucy also laughed. In fact, she cares more about Luo Ning's attitude towards work than the salary. She wants to see a boss who cares about the company rather than the whole God only knows the dead fat house who stays at home, eats, drinks and has fun. "Mr. Luo Ning, did you clear the assassin level last night?" Thomas came with a bunch of snacks. When he entered the door and saw Lucy, he subconsciously covered his mouth. He seemed to have said the wrong thing. Hearing this, Lucy, whose attitude had just improved, immediately became ferocious again. She looked at Luo Ning with flames in her eyes, and then angrily left with her handbag. "You two watch the movie, I'm leaving." Walking to the door, Lucy turned her head. "By the way, Mr. Luo Ning, I hope you can clear the game tonight." After she left, Luo Ning patted his forehead and looked at Thomas with helplessness. "Boy, can't you check the situation before you speak?" Lucy still dares to say that. Does this make him look bad? It's all right now. All the previous explanations have been turned into weak words, and Lucy will never believe a word of him again. With this time, Lucy will definitely treat all his excuses as lies. He is a hands-off shopkeeper, and he is solid. "Sorry, Mr. Ronan." Thomas knew he had said something wrong. "I'm going to bring Assistant Barrett back." Luo Ning waved his hand. "Forget it, she will definitely not come, she has already disappointed me." It was quite helpless to say this. As the CEO, he didn't have the courage to lose his temper with Lucy, because Lucy had paid too much for the company. Since he traveled through time, Lucy has been her right-hand man. "It's only been a few days since I stayed in the company to experience what it's like to be a president. I used to be a qualified otaku, but I turned over to become the president after time travel. Experience the rich and handsome life. This is worthy of traveling through. However, as soon as the novelty wears off, I get stabbed in the butt, can't sit still in the office, wander around the company like a wandering ghost, and finally stay at home because I can't stay, and I still feel comfortable playing games. Really fragrant. It takes too much time to flirt with a girl. The body bought with money is meaningless, but the interesting soul weighs more than 300 pounds. Let's go racing. I'm afraid I'll lose my life." As for traveling, Luo Ning can't afford it. With this time, it is enough for him to travel a country in the game. How can games be exciting in reality? Games can do whatever they want, but can reality? Don't say that you can do whatever you want with money. At least he doesn't feel it now. At most the quality of life is better, other than that, it's not much different from ordinary people. During that period of time, she was crazily addicted to games. Since then, Lucy has taken on responsibilities that do not belong to her. If there are things she cannot decide, she will call him and ask him to take care of things in an orderly manner. Until now, it is still the case. So Luo Ning really doesn't have the right to lose his temper with her. If she plays petty temper and quits, he really won't be able to find an assistant as responsible as her for a while, and he won't have such a high relationship with him. Tacit agreement. Putting aside his thoughts, Luo Ning let out a sigh of relief. Let's watch a movie, and find an opportunity to make up for Lucy in the future. He really can't show his face during this time, otherwise it will cause trouble for the people around him. When he can raise the light shield to protect everyone, he can go out swaggeringly, admitting his identity, and being targeted by Hydra. He has the right to decide everything. Not letting the people around him get hurt because of him is the reason why he stays at home. Counseling, non-existent. It's his nature to just do what he refuses to accept. In the empty room, only the sound effects of the movie echoed. Ronan and Thomas were immersed in the world of the movie. Mr. Stark's acting skills are pretty good. Halfway through the film, Thomas finally dared to say this sentence. From the beginning to the end, Mr. Stark's expressions and movements did not appear in the slightest, and he felt that this role was tailor-made for him. Nonsense, this is Tony's true character, there is no need to change anything specially. What you usually do, you can do it when you make a movie, but the performance is still not as natural as usual, some details are a bit contrived, the action is a bit strong. No, generally speaking, it's pretty good. After all, I'm not a professional actor, but I can achieve the same level as a professional actor, that's fine. Luo Ning commented. When Tony put on the Mark I made by himself, Thomas exclaimed. It seems unbelievable to anyone. Although the armor is bulky and cannot be compared with the armor Tony is wearing now, but being able to create the first set of armor under such circumstances is already different from ordinary people. Do you think Mr. Stark's real experience is like this? Such a set of battle armor was built with the materials used to make munitions. Thomas spread his hands, with a look of disbelief. Even if it is a genius, it is impossible for a genius to reach this stage. Anyway, he can't connect the materials used to make advanced weapons with the battle armor. The conditions at that time were so bad, there was no equipment, and he almost relied on his hands. Luo Ning nodded. What do you think Stark Industries relied on to develop into the military factory in the United States? It's Tony's head. It can be said that there is no one in the world who can compare with him in terms of invention and creativity. His evaluation can be said to be very high, but there is no exaggeration. Tony does have such strength. The arc reactor is enough to prove his extraordinary ability. Thomas had always admired Mr. Stark, but now that he heard his boss's evaluation, he admired him even more, and felt that he was even more powerful than his own boss. The Mark I is indestructible. The enemy's firepower is useless, but it is still somewhat useful. The surface of the battle armor has scorched black marks, but the internal components are intact, so Tony wears it, just like Iron Man, coming and going freely. Back at the company, Tony was deeply aware of the horror of those weapons they produced, so he no longer manufactured arms, and this must have been opposed by the major shareholder Obadiah Stan, but Tony insisted on his position. Stan had no choice but to start with Tony and take down his arc reactor, and the Iron King was born. In the end, Tony fought a decisive battle with the Iron Overlord, which brought Randian to its peak. Tony used the improved Mark III to lead the Iron Overlord to a high altitude, making the surface of the Iron Overlord freeze, and finally defeated the Iron Overlord. Originally, Tony was at a disadvantage in the early stage, and Thomas was sweating for it, but in the end he took advantage of this point, which just echoed Tony's discovery of icing during high-altitude flight and improved the Mark II, using titanium alloy to make the shell, making it will not freeze at high altitude. The Iron Overlord obviously didn't notice this, so using this, Tony defeated the Iron Overlord and made a great contribution to world peace. This is not forcibly related to world peace, but it really has this meaning. If Iron Overlord defeats Tony and spends a lot of time researching the arc reactor in the end, with Iron Overlord ambition, he will definitely mass-produce armor and sell it to the country, or if the evil forces are used in war, it must be a global disaster. And Tony, of course, stifled this disaster in the cradle, and he is also extremely smart. No matter who it is, even if it is requested by the country, he will never hand over the production method of the Mark series armor and the arc reactor technology. Because he clearly knows that if the country possesses this kind of technology, then with the ambition of the country, it will definitely conquer the city and conquer the territory. At that time, it will bring about a global crisis. Therefore, Iron Man can only be him. At the end, Thomas said loudly, "It's so cool. Mr. Stark is simply a genius." In the last scene of the movie, Tony was being interviewed by reporters. When he couldn't make it up and said, "I'm actually Iron Man," all major theaters around the world burst into earth-shattering shouts. Everyone cheers and cheers for Iron Man. The last movie apparently has one line of subtitles. This film is adapted from real events. The protagonist of the story, Tony Stark, is the president of Stark Industries Group. Obadiah Stein of Graham Industrial Properties, stifling the potential disaster. In fact, Ronan hardly changed anything, just changed the Easter eggs of the original film to those belonging to Overwatch. Thinking of this, Luo Ning himself felt embarrassed. This should not be regarded as plagiarism. Anyway, they are two different worlds. In the Marvel world, he is the creator of this story. Why a little shame? The cast and crew list appeared, but the audiences of the major theaters did not leave their seats. Even if there were, they were held back by their companions. They were all waiting for the final bonus of the film, an Easter egg. Easter eggs are likely to be connected to the next film. When the last line of subtitles on the screen fell into pure black, the screen suddenly turned, and the hearts of the audience also turned. In an abandoned bar, a rough man with white hair and a white vest was lying on the bar. Beside him, a beautiful girl with a brown ponytail was leaning on the bar, as if trying to persuade him. "We've discussed it many times, you don't have to do it anymore. Winston's message is not for you, it's not your fight anymore. Dad told me, you played for Overwatch for so many years, you put everything, they were all dedicated to them, but they were kicked out in the end, why do you want to go back?" The picture cuts to the front of the two. The left eye of the white-haired man is broken, and the erected scar seems to tell his unbearable past, and there are also many scars on his thick arm, and the thick white beard sets off his appearance. A Twilight lion. At this moment, he looked deeply at the badge in his hand. Under the light, the badge was particularly shiny, but it was mottled. Seeing this, the screaming voices of movie fans are about to lift the roofs of major theaters, because they know that it is the symbol of Overwatch, which looks like a but in fact it is the art of the English initials OW of Overwatch combination, cleverly blending W into the letter O. Like a high five between two people, it means the need for teamwork, and like an eye staring at the earth in the sky, it means the future and hope. After a brief black screen, the two came to a place that looked like a palace. On the stairs, a crusader wearing bright golden armor was leaning on the seat, with a huge warhammer leaning against the wall, and the faint light seemed to tell the glory of the past. Iron. The white-haired man walked over and put the Overwatch badge on the armrest, turned around, walked towards the ponytail girl with hopeful eyes, and his thick voice rang out. "I have been called and I must answer, as always." Luo Ning naturally knew the source of this Easter egg, and he also knew who these two characters were. That's right, he, the porter, moved the first and last clips of the Glory short film of World Overwatch again. The man who looks like a Twilight lion is naturally the protagonist of the next movie, Reinhardt, and the girl with the ponytail is Bridget, the daughter of Torbjorn, who is also known as the Fortress, a female heroine. As for why these two people stayed together, it had to mention Tobian. Shortly after the Omnic crisis, an Overwatch strike team was dispatched to deal with an Omnic uprising in Turkey. Torbjorn and Reinhardt were on the team, and they became very close comrades in arms. During the mission, Reinhardt saved Torbjorn's life, though Torbjorn still lost an arm. In return for saving his life, Torbjorn asked his friend to be the godfather of his unborn daughter. Reinhardt always asked to name her, and Torbjorn had to say yes. So, the name Bridget was actually given by Reinhardt. Fans of the Marvel Universe naturally don't know the story, but they can see that this rugged-looking man is the protagonist of the next movie, and then they have to guess what kind of superhero he will be. Judging from his physique alone, he may be a powerful fighter, and his scarred body also shows that he is a fighter who can fight in close combat. It's easy to guess, as long as the IQ is normal, they can basically guess the same, but they definitely can't guess the storyline. From the beginning of Reinhardt's movie, the Omnic crisis officially kicked off. "Mr. Luo Ning, can you reveal some information about the next movie?" Thomas couldn't finish it. That rough man suits his taste very much. He likes this kind of very manly man. He goes to the battlefield to fight hand to hand, tisk. It's exciting to think about. Well, the protagonist of the next movie will be the man who appeared in the Easter egg. Luo Ning said. Thomas has black hair, thinking, are you kidding me? This fool can see it, he doesn't look so stupid, right? Can you tell me a little more? Luo Ning thought for a moment. Well, the protagonist is a very brave warrior. Quote. Thomas gave up. It seemed that the boss didn't intend to reveal any important plot at all. Well, it's just late at night, and it's time to go to the nightclub to have fun. These days the boss doesn't go out, so he can enjoy the carnival in the nightclub at night, so happy. It's actually quite leisurely to stay in the room alone. After watching the movie, I lie on the sofa and brush my beans for a while, and it's time to wash up and go to bed. He also watched the movie in the evening, which was the premiere time of the major theaters, so after he finished watching it, movie fans from all over the world should also finish watching it. At this time, it should be the time for Duban to discuss it. In fact, Luo Ning was a little nervous. After all, this was not Goldfinger's own script, but a tribute to Iron Man on Earth. Seeing the good reviews on the homepage, Luo Ning knew that this wave was stable. While there are good reviews, there are naturally negative reviews, but the flaws are not hidden. The advantages of Iron Man far outweigh the flaws. If there are any shortcomings in Iron Man, it is that the final battle between Iron Man and the Iron King is not intense enough, and it is not shocking, a feeling of. In the movie, Winston's outburst at the end can be said to have touched the hearts of countless movie fans. The audience wished they could turn into Winston and tear up those wild gorillas with their own hands. In Soldier 76, even the army is helpless, but Soldier 76 breaks into the terrorist base alone with his super strong belief. The whole process is like walking on thin ice, which also affects the heartstrings of the audience. At that time, the audience didn't even dare to breathe, and completely substituted themselves into the movie, fearing that a heavy breath would cause Soldier 76 to be discovered by the enemy, resulting in the failure of the operation. But in Iron Man, the battle started very casually and ended very casually. The only bright spot is that Tony used the feature of high-altitude icing to establish the victory, but it was still not exciting enough, and it felt like an anticlimax. Ronan had this feeling when watching movies on Earth, but he was not sure that he could improve it better, so he had to keep using it. Moreover, Iron Man is only slightly different from Soldier 76 inches and Winston. Insufficient, compared with other movies. If you don't finish talking, it is also properly crushed. Bean Bancheng has not only expressed the fans' impressions of Iron Man, but also their speculation about the next movie. Everyone knows that the protagonist of the next movie will be the white-haired man who appeared in the Easter egg, and they all agree that Bridget is Reinhardt's niece. They all had their own guesses about what the next movie was going to be about, but none of them matched the script. After browsing one by one, Luo Ning couldn't laugh or cry. Do Bancheng was full of talents, and they spoke nicely, and I really liked being in it. I won't talk about the big brain hole, and the analysis is still clear. The original post is this. The male protagonist has many scars on his body, and his left eye is blind, so he doesn't use guns, and likes to fight in close combat. This shows that the male protagonist is a battle-tested soldier, and the girl cares so much about him, which shows that the relationship between the two is not good. Generally, it's either a relative, or a master-student, or maybe it's a master-student relationship. Secondly, through the dialogue between the two, it can be seen that the hero made a huge contribution to Overwatch but was kicked in the end. Winston is calling again now, probably because they had internal conflicts before, but according to my current understanding of Overwatch, the possibility of internal conflicts is very small. If the male lead had a conflict, it was Winston's fault. Both the hero and Winston are powerful heroes, and they usually look up and down, so there is inevitably an urge to be higher or lower, but Winston has a racial advantage, and the hero will definitely lose in the usual battles. After repeated battles and defeats, the hero's confidence was crushed, and he tried his best to prove that he was better than Winston, so he forced himself to stand out in a collective action, which resulted in the failure of the action and was eventually expelled from Overwatch. Now that Overwatch needs manpower, he has been summoned again, which is absolutely true. As for what story the movie will tell, it's really hard to guess. How could the screenwriter's ideas overlap with mine? But there is one thing, the movie will definitely have a villain, and in the end it will definitely be the protagonist's side that wins. Luo Ning was almost on his knees after reading it. His imagination is so rich, the love between master and apprentice. If Tobian was here, he would probably be able to follow the network cable to find that person's house and tear it down. As for the relationship between Reinhardt and Winston, it would be even more nonsense. May I ask that a warrior with ideals and aspirations will compete with a gorilla all day long? Reinhardt's confidence was crushed by Winston. Oh my god, I really admire this movie fan's ability to expand his mind. However, the analysis of this post is in place, convincing with reason and evidence, and the cause and effect are clearly explained. If Luo Ning knew the background story of Overwatch, he would have almost believed it. Other movie fans didn't know that the poster was still a strong duzhong with certain credibility, so many people replied to express their approval. Luo Ning didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw it, and immediately took a deep breath. This shit is just a bit of a joke. The box office of Iron Man broke 9 million on the first day, which is 1 million higher than that of Winston. It can be seen that Iron Man was shot well. In addition, Iron Man is a real superhero with its own traffic. So surpassing Winston is not something to be amazed at. Mainly because the script is well written. Is there a better screenwriter than him in the world? Luo Ning is complacent about this. He is indeed talented in screenwriting, although it is a bit opportunistic. At the same time that Iron Man was released, the filming of Reinhardt was also put on the agenda. We must seize the time and strengthen ourselves before the crisis comes, so that we can calmly deal with all kinds of troubles. Suddenly there was the sound of a car braking outside the door, and Luo Ning walked cautiously, only to find that it was Tony and his driver and bodyguard, Happy. Ronan opened the door to welcome him, and Tony opened his arms and gave him a big hug. Oh, this movie is beyond my expectation, it's great. Tony was smiling all over his face. He watched Iron Man with all the employees of the group last night. The exclamation can be said to have never stopped. The movie fully demonstrated his personality charm. Those close-up shots also showed his handsomeness and chickness. Come out. It can be said that there is no flaw in him in the movie. If there is, it is too perfect. It shouldn't be a flaw to like beautiful women. As long as he is a normal man, he will be interested in beautiful girls, unless it is abnormal, such as a problem with orientation, or something wrong with that. As I expected, Luo Ning smiled, and then made 2 cups of tea for them. There is no coffee, just drink it. Tony took it and tasted it. It was slightly bitter and tasted good, but it was too hot. Then he gave a look, and Happy opened the suitcase knowingly, and a mountain of dollar bills filled the whole suitcase, making his eyes hurt. This is. Luo Ning pointed to the suitcase. Tony smiled and said, "Thank Overwatch Films for making such an excellent movie for Iron Man. These rights should be my gratitude to your company." Luo Ning shook his head. "Take it back, you have to know that I didn't shoot Iron Man for money. If I'm short of money, why didn't I talk to you beforehand? Of course I know that Overwatch Films is not short of money, but this just represents a little bit of my heart. The heart is not reflected in the money. I will definitely not accept the money. If you treat me as a friend, please take it back." Luo Ning's attitude was firm, and Tony was indeed generous, and he could see the sincerity of the latter, but it still couldn't touch his heartstrings. Money, Overwatch Pictures really does not lack. What is lacking is the relationship network possessed by Tony. It can be said that as long as we have a good relationship with Tony, any troubles can be easily resolved. Tony didn't force it, and asked Happy to close the suitcase, and then said to Ronan, "It's okay not to accept the money, but you must go to the Stark Expo. As a special guest, you must give this face." Stark Expo. Luo Ning frowned slightly, searched for Marvel movies in his mind, and finally locked on Iron Man 2. According to the timeline, the most recent is indeed the time period when the plot of Iron Man 2 inches took place. After the expo, Justin Hammer, the main system contractor of the Ministry of Defense, will join forces with the government to ask Tony to hand over the core technology of Iron Man, but Tony refuses. Tony also controlled the video system at the hearing of the Senate Armed Services Committee, exposing the video of Hammer's private development of a pirated Iron Man to everyone. The clumsy armor is extremely funny. Tony said that other countries have to develop it for at least 5 to 10 years, and laughed at Hammer Industries for 20 years, so he firmly refused to hand over Iron Man's technology to the country, and said that Iron Man is not a weapon, but himself. Immediately after Tony's blood toxin content reached an uncontrollable level, Tony would go to the Monaco F1 Grand Prix to let himself go, so the whip appeared. After the whip was defeated, he was put in prison, but was rescued by Hammer. Hammer wants Whiplash's technology, but Whiplash is hell-bent on killing Tony. So at the Hammer Fair, a riot of robots was caused. Based on the lifetime effort left by Howard Stark, Tony found a new element to replace Palladium, and finally Iron Man and War Machine teamed up to defeat the whip. Luo Ning pondered for a while. He just went to participate in the expo, so there was nothing wrong with it. There was no danger in the expo in the movie. Yes, Tony Stark, kindly invite Mr. Ronan to participate in the Stark Expo. Tony's eyes were burning. Seeing his eagerness, Luo Ning couldn't refuse, so he asked, when? The day after tomorrow, in Flushing. Luo Ning nodded. Okay, I'll go there then. A smile appeared on Tony's face immediately. Looking forward to your arrival, then I won't bother you, go to bed early. Luo Ning watched them leave, then sat on the sofa and became sad, thought for a long time, and decided not to intervene in this matter. Tony can solve this matter, and the place where it happened is not in Manhattan, so it won't pose any threat to him, he just needs to be a quiet bystander. It's none of your business, hang up high. In fact, you can't say that, he is still very kind, if something harmful to mankind happens, he will definitely contribute his own strength, it is not his style to stand by and watch. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. He has never seen a superhero who stays at home all day long. As long as the war does not spread to the door, he does not hear what is going on outside the window. Even the little spider Peter is around. Is everyone's good neighbor, and joining the Avengers reflects one's own value. Lying on the bed, Luo Ning started chatting on the phone, and the object was of course Lucy. Women are complicated creatures, and sometimes they will sulk for days on their own over trivial things, but as long as the person who offended her lowers his attitude and apologizes, it's not a big deal. In order for Lucy to work better and for the future of the company, Luo Ning decided to apologize to her. Sure enough, after the apology and greetings, the voiceover there was obviously much softer. By the way, sir, you will come to the company tomorrow, and there are a lot of documents that need your signature. For such a request, Luo Ning could only accept it. It seemed that he hadn't been to the company for almost a month. If you refuse, the saliva just now will be in vain. I slept until dawn, and as soon as I woke up, the long-lost electronic sound sounded in my mind. Iron Man surpassed the Overwatch series. Soldier 76 feet in Winston, at the box office on the first day, Soldier 76 and Winston's super transformation form is activated. Super transform form. Luo Ning was a little dazed. Normally, he would sit on the bed to slow down for a few seconds after getting up, but he slowed down for a full 2 minutes, and at the end he was still in a dazed state. What the hell is a super transform form? Do you still have to shout, Soldier 76, activate the super transformation form before transforming? Then retract your head in and use it as a butt groove. Thinking about that picture makes my eyes hot. Luo Ning got up and washed his face to clear himself up. Thinking back just now, he was 100% sure it wasn't a dream. The voice in his head had indeed appeared, but now it disappeared. No matter how he communicated, he couldn't make the voice appear again. Try it. Whether it's true or not, you'll know if you try it. After making up his mind, Luo Ning closed the bedroom door, then raised his coat hanger and shouted in a low voice, Soldier 76, activate the super transformation form. Throwing the hanger on the bed, he looked down. He was wearing blue clothes and pants, even the shoes were blue, his whole body was blue. Walking quickly to the floor-to-ceiling mirror, seeing himself in the mirror, Luo Ning froze for 2 seconds, opened his mouth slightly, and whispered in surprise, Blue Devil Driver. That's right, he is now wearing a blue helmet, blue clothes and shoes, and a short cape. He has the proper skin of Soldier 76 Blue Devil's Driver. This is the so-called super transformation form. After understanding the situation, Luo Ning breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't draw his head in like Kabuta and used it as his butt. It should be possible to transform without shouting such a shameful line, right? Luo Ning tried it out, and thought to himself, like the previous transformation, the self in the mirror has changed into another outfit, this time it is a death squad. With camouflage painted on his face, a brown-yellow jacket, army green trousers, and a pair of dark brown military boots, he looks quite heroic overall. Dress-up function. This is too tasteless, although it was a complete accident, because he never thought that filming Iron Man can activate heroes or functions, but the activated functions are too useless, except for changing costumes. Luo Ning couldn't help complaining. I'm not a girl, so I don't like playing Nikki Dress-Up Queen. This kind of extremely boring dress-up game, he is an old man who would not play it, it is a waste of time. Hey, let me see if Winston's skin is handsome. Throughout the morning, the bedroom door was never opened, and there was a sound of, wow. From time to time. At 1 o'clock in the noon, the door was violently pushed open with a swish. Luo Ning hurried out while putting on his coat. Thomas was already waiting outside. Under Ronan's urging, Thomas drove very fast, arriving at the company in only 2/3 of the usual time. Luo Ning strode into the gate, but was stopped by a small security guard. This security guard was a stranger, and he wanted to verify his identity at such a young age. Luo Ning curled his lips in dissatisfaction. Since he didn't bring his ID, the little security guard refused to let him in, no matter what he said. Lucy just came out at this time, and the little security guard immediately shouted politely when he saw her, Assistant Barrett. This voice that seemed to see the sun was like a thunderbolt from the blue sky, slamming into his heart. Luo Ning shouted in his heart, what did he do wrong? Why treat him like this? The security guard doesn't even know his own boss, but he treats the boss's assistant so respectfully. Is there any law? Is there any reason? Seeing Luo Ning and the security guard standing there, Lucy frowned, then hurried over, and asked in confusion, Mr. Luo Ning, why don't you go up and stand here? Hearing this, the little security guard immediately stared at him in fear. His throat seemed to be blocked by something, and he couldn't speak a word. The little security guard was extremely panicked, but he was also very doomed up. The man in front of him, who didn't even shave his beard, looked left, right, up and down, didn't look like a boss, but was actually the president of Overwatch Films. Not to mention wearing casual clothes, the zipper of the jacket is not closed, whoever enters and exits this gate is not in a suit. Even the cleaners wear clean and tidy overalls. People who came across such nonsense in the past were all thrown out directly. If the boss hadn't told him yesterday to treat every visitor politely, this person would have been thrown out of the door by him long ago. Now that I think about it, it's really scary. Fortunately, the boss taught him a lesson yesterday, otherwise he would be finished, but even if he didn't kick the boss out, it seems that he would be smashed by himself. Luo Ning looked at the little security guard angrily, pointed at his face, and said helplessly, remember my face, the owner of this face is your boss. I remember, Mr. Luo Ning. The little security guard replied, not daring to glance at him. Lucy was stunned for a moment, then covered her face with her hands, giggling intermittently. After getting on the elevator, Lucy still teased him, you are such a failure as a boss, even your employees don't know you. Do I have to come to the company frequently to refresh my face in the future? Luo Ning rolled his eyes. This little security guard is real, even if he doesn't come to the company often, he hasn't seen it, he always sees it on TV or in newspapers, right? Use the mirror. Luo Ning couldn't help doubting himself, and looked at his face carefully with a small round mirror. Okay, the hair has grown and the beard has grown, and it doesn't match the appearance when he was interviewed before, but this time it's not even the reason why I don't know my boss. You can't blame him either. That little security guard was just hired. I may have only seen you in the media before. Your image now is not the same as what the media presents. Lucy put the mirror back in her handbag and said with a smile. Okay, I'll clean up after I'm done with this. Luo Ning shook his head, he was too busy this time. When I arrived at the office, I saw the pile of documents on the desk at a glance, and my head suddenly became dizzy. Sitting in his seat, Luo Ning asked impatiently, what are these? Don't show me unimportant documents. Most of them are cooperation agreements. You entrust me with most of the work of negotiating cooperation matters. I negotiated these, but you need to sign them yourself. Luo Ning let out an, oh, and stamped each document after a cursory glance. Standing by the side, Lucy shook her head, and couldn't help sighing in her heart that her boss was so big-hearted that she wasn't afraid of traps in the contract. After half an hour, Luo Ning breathed a sigh of relief, the task was completed. In fact, he didn't even want to look at these things, he just walked away, and he could rest assured one times with Lucy watching over them. As for the vice president, it's just a decoration. It can be used when entertaining distinguished guests and dealing with the media. It is impossible for the vice president to discuss cooperation with other companies, because the only person he can trust in the entire company is Lucy. By the way, Mr. Luo Ning, there is a cooperation project with a big company tomorrow, and you need to discuss this in person. Not tomorrow, just push it back. Luo Ning was categorical and promised Tony to participate in the Stark Expo, so he couldn't break his promise, as long as the sky didn't fall. The other party only has time tomorrow. Lucy said. I have time except tomorrow, so I won't talk about it if I can't. Luo Ning looked calm. So far no company has dared to show off with him, so let's not talk about it if we don't have time. It's that simple. Anyway, money can't be made. It doesn't matter if you earn less or more, he's still going big live in a mansion. Winning one more cooperation project will not change his current situation, so why delay his own affairs to talk about the so-called big cooperation? Will we be able to reach an agreement if we talk about it? So, live happily as you like. Where there are so many bad things, they are all caused by yourself. Lucy curled her lips, but she could only nod her head. The decision is in the hands of the boss, as long as she fulfills her responsibilities. Chapter 51. New York, Flushing. Luo Ning came to the Stark Expo as scheduled. It is no exaggeration to describe the scene as a sea of people. All kinds of lights flickered, making the scene look like a bar. On the stage, girls in naval dresses danced cheerfully. The colorful spotlights illuminated them as bright as flowers. The explosive dance music beat with the heartbeat, and their big white legs swayed dizzily. The people around looked at the stage, let out a deafening roar, twisted their bodies, and danced with it. The scene was so high that it exploded, and this was still in the absence of Tony. If he came, it would probably lift the dome up. Stark Expo. No matter how you look at it, it looks like a dance party. Many people are shaking their heads like crazy people and taking ecstasy. Luo Ning's face was full of sadness. To be honest, he really disliked this kind of environment of feasting, and the loud voices were about to burst his head. Easy. Sighing helplessly, agreeing to Tony's invitation was the worst decision he had made in recent days, and he was not suitable to participate in such an exciting event. If it weren't for wearing a mask, he can guarantee that the people around him would annoy him to death. At this time, a steel flying man suddenly flew from the main entrance, landed in the center of the stage, and raised his hands to feel the upsurge of the scene. Luo Ning couldn't help but give him a blank look. What a coward! With the Iron Man suit, he can't walk anymore, and those who can fly don't need to walk. The circular ground under Tony's feet rotated slowly, and a few pairs of yellow mechanical arms stretched out, and he took off the Mark battle suit on him, showing his expression of enjoyment. The battle suit faded away, revealing his striped suit, white shirt inside, and black bow tie, which is undoubtedly the finishing touch. As soon as Tony came, there were waves of shouts from the audience, but Luo Ning's ears suffered, so he had to hide in a corner and cover his ears. Accompanied by the melodious ending of the explosive dance music, the hot dancers all made the last graceful movement, and then walked off the stage in a neat formation. Tony clapped his hands on stage and smiled at the big laugh. It feels good to be back. As soon as he spoke, the noisy voice suddenly subsided, and Luo Ning breathed out, and his ears were finally quiet for a while. I'm not saying that the world has ushered in the longest period of continuous peace because of me. I'm not saying that from the ashes of captivity, the greatest metaphorical phoenix in human history has been reborn. I'm not saying that Uncle Sam lay back on a lawn chair with an iced tea because I haven't met a guy who has the kind of ability to go head to head with the best of me. Tony started his speech, with a rich voice and ups and downs, especially when he uttered the last sentence of this paragraph, the arrogance that originated from the bones, but no one can imitate it. Luo Ning curled his lips, and used parallel sentences. Pay attention. Hearing Tony's domineering opening remarks, the crowd in the audience immediately boiled up and screamed continuously. They were proud that they liked such a manly man, except for men of course. I love you, Tony. Some female fans screamed out loud. Luo Ning shook his head helplessly, insisting on turning the expo into a fan meeting. Tony also didn't want to change the nature of the exposition, although the opening ceremony of the exposition was indeed very grand. Well, it also meant a personal performance. He waved his hand and said solemnly, "Get rid of it. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's not even about us, it's about legacy, it's about what we decide to leave for future generations." So, in this year, and for the first time since 1974, the brightest and best men and women in every country and every business in the world will pool their resources and share a common vision to leave behind a better future. The point is not us, so, I want to say, if I have something special to say, welcome to Stark Expo again. The applause from the audience was so loud that it was almost as loud as gongs and drums. 666. Luo Ning raised his little finger and thumb up. Tony's coquettishness, no one can learn it. Secondly, I want to invite a mysterious guest to the stage. If I am the flesh and blood and soul of the expo, then this mysterious guest is the finishing touch of the expo. Let's give warm applause to the CEO of Overwatch Films, Mr. Ronan. Tony's eyes locked on Luo Ning, who was trembling in the corner. He saw him the moment he came on stage, surrounded by others, and he was the only one leaning in the corner in an unconventional way. It was hard not to be noticed. Hearing that Luo Ning also came to the scene, the crowd in the audience was full of excitement, and the applause resounded through the main exhibition hall like thunder, not weaker than the applause when everyone welcomed Tony just now. Luo Ning almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. There is a saying that I don't know if I should say it or not, so let him quietly be a salted fish calling 666 in the audience. If he insisted on showing his face on stage, the original plot didn't show up like this. What kind of plane is he doing? Ronan took off his mask, walked through the crowd, walked onto the stage, smiled at Tony, it was an awkward but polite smile, and then bowed slightly to everyone. Hi everyone, I'm Ronan. The applause sounded again. Stark Expo became more interesting because of him. On the stage, the two are in stark contrast, one is in a suit and leather shoes, the other is full of casual style, but they both seem to have a strong aura. Luo Ning was lucky that the little security guard didn't know him, so he went to the barber shop last night to have a look, and now he doesn't look so sloppy. So, what does Mr. Ronan want to say about this Stark Expo? Tony asked with a smile. Well, I hope that Stark Industries can be at the forefront of technology and create products that benefit human development. At the same time, I also hope that everyone believes in Stark Industries and Mr. Stark, and believes that they can bring us a better tomorrow. Luo Ning felt that it was pretty good to be able to talk like this temporarily, at least he was satisfied, but the scene fell into a semi-embarrassing situation, and everyone was expecting him to say more, but he really had nothing to say. Having said so much under the circumstances, it is considered an extraordinary performance. Seeing this, Tony took the lead in applauding, but it didn't stop the embarrassing situation completely, and then he said, Overwatch Pictures took me as the prototype, and even invited me, a businessman who has no knowledge of acting, as the leading role in the filming of Iron Man. I originally wanted to have fun with this movie, but I didn't expect the response to be exceptionally good. Luo Ning was always smiling, but there was an inexplicable feeling in the slightly raised corners of his lips. It seems that he never invited Tony. From the very beginning, it seems that Tony came to him and spared no expense to invite him to film Iron Man, and emphasized that he should play the leading role himself. Sure enough, few of the celebrities' speeches in public are true, and they want to maintain their perfect personality. My deeds are believed to be known to everyone. I don't need to say more. My fame has also resounded throughout the United States. It is no exaggeration to be a household name. However, Watch Films has recorded my most glorious deeds in the form of movies and spread them all over the world. Let everyone know that there is such an amazing talent in this small place in Manhattan, New York. Although my reputation has long been known overseas, only a few people know about it, and overseas friends don't know what I have done. They only know that I am a mechanic with an IQ exceeding the standard, or a businessman from a wealthy country. The movie, Iron Man, has told the world what I am most proud of so far, and let the world know what kind of person I am through the movie. Therefore, I would like to thank Overwatch Films and the screenwriter Mr. Luo Ning. It is he who wrote such an excellent script that made the box office of Iron Man hit a new high. It also proved that my acting talent is not bad. Maybe I can use Iron Man to win the Best Actor award or something, yes, even the Oscars. The ears were so uncomfortable, Luo Ning found himself suffering from obsessive words and cleanliness. Tony talked a lot, boasting himself in different ways. While praising him, he was paving the way for boasting himself, thus elevating himself to a higher position. Sure enough, he is the most conceited guy in the entire Marvel, and Luo Ning has seen it. Please get off the stage quickly, it made me feel uncomfortable. Luo Ning finally realized that Tony called him on the stage to serve as a background board for him, so as to highlight himself. Others may not have this weight on the stage, but he does. The CEO of Overwatch Films has fans all over the world. No matter in terms of influence or status, he is no weaker than Tony. It is for this reason that Tony chose him as a guest, because letting a world-renowned person like him serve as the background board, with the help of ingenious sarcasm, can make him appear awesome. Hi, it's really high. Luo Ning felt admiration, and his flirtatious talk made people's scalps go numb, and the audience raised their arms and shouted, "Tony," and the exposition abruptly changed. "Mr. Luo Ning, do you think so?" Tony spoke with great excitement, with a big smile on his face. "It's your mother, a big watermelon." In front of so many people, it was still live broadcasting. I don't know how many people are watching the TV. No matter how tired Luo Ning was, he had to bear it silently. This must be the most aggrieved time since he crossed. In reality, it eventually became a qualified background board for Iron Man. There is no way, he still has to cooperate with Tony to complete this pretense that is even more pretentious than Chen Beixuan, Li Qiye and Shu Ke. He pulled the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, "Mr. Stark's acting skills can reach the pinnacle of perfection, but he is not from a major. Looking at the whole of North America, there are very few actors whose acting skills surpass yours." Who wouldn't brag? He was so bragging that he was afraid of himself. "Mr. Luo Ning is overrated. Although my acting skills in Iron Man are indeed superb, it is still not as good as those well-known actors who have won awards." The sudden show flashed Lao Su's waist. "Luo Ning really wants to say that you really want to order billion, that is to say, it's not bad to play in your true colors. Besides Iron Man, what else can you play? Tony, I love you. Tony, I want to give you a monkey." The crowd and the audience liked to hear Tony boasting about himself, and they kept clamoring. Tony's temperament of being the best in the world was the key to attracting them. Luo Ning wiped his face. He felt that the future Stark Expo could be renamed the Iron Man fan meeting, and the topic was too serious. Tony seemed to be aware of this too, and then he coughed twice, put away his smile, and said solemnly, "Now, a special guest will cross the gap between life and death to explain everything to you. Please invite my father, Howard." Call finally got into the theme, and finally can step down, no longer need to be a background board for Tony. The video of Howard Stark's life was shown on the big screen, emphasizing his life's painstaking efforts. The city of the future, the so-called city of the future, is the key to Tony's invention of new elements, but he has not realized it yet, still worrying about the increasing blood toxin every day. Behind the scenes, Tony turned his back to Ronan, took out the instrument for detecting blood toxin content, and pressed it with his thumb. It showed that the blood toxin content had reached 19%. His originally relaxed face instantly became dignified. At this rate, within 2 months, he would die from the blood toxin brought by the palladium element. "Tony, what are you doing?" Ronan asked knowingly. Tony quickly put away the equipment, then turned around and said with a smile, "It's nothing, let's go out, there is no need to stay here, it seems that you don't like crowded places. I think your father's idea of a city of the future is a great invention and creation," Luo Ning said. "That's a model city, it's not a big deal," Tony said casually, and then opened his legs, "Let's go." Along the way, a bunch of people flocked eagerly, looking for autographs or group photos. Of course, group photos are impossible. If a precedent is set, it may be difficult to get out from here. Happy helped to disperse the crowd. Tony and Ronan walked behind, and from time to time, they picked a fan who was pleasing to the eye to sign an autograph, and finally cleared the road that was blocked by the crowd. "It's going well, not too bad." Happy looked at Tony, then at Ronan. "Yeah, perfect," Tony boasted. "Well, it did go well," Luo Ning said. "Look what this is. New car." Happy pointed to a silver sports car in front of him, and in front of the sports car stood a slim lady in a purple dress and black skirt, which made her figure even more concave and convex. "Did she come with the car?" Tony's eyes lit up. "I hope so," Happy replied. "Who are you?" Tony asked. "Marcel." The lady offered her hand. "Irish name. I like it." Tony shook his hand perfunctorily, and walked to the other side of the sports car. "Nice to meet you, Tony." Then Marcel looked at Luo Ning, stretched out his hand politely, and said with a smile, "Nice meeting, Mr. Luo Ning." Luo Ning also smiled, stretched out his hand, and said to Tony, "Okay, I have to go first. Tony, you should be busy." He has to go. This woman is a bailiff, and she came here to serve Tony a subpoena for him to attend the hearing held by the military committee tomorrow, when Tony will completely tear himself apart with the military committee. "Aren't you going to have fun with us?" Tony looked at him. Luo Ning smiled. "I won't go, I still have something to do." I thought to myself, Hammer, I rushed to Washington overnight, and I went to Washington to get high slowly. "Mr. Luo Ning, wait a moment." Marcel stopped him. Luo Ning frowned. What route is this? Immediately, she stood aside and thought, could it be that this girl has taken a fancy to him and wants to spend a good night with him? Thinking about it, I am a little excited. "Where are you from?" Tony asked. "Bedford," Marcel replied. "What are you doing here?" Tony asked again. "Looking for you." "Really? You found me?" Tony opened the door and got in the car, looking at Marcel. "What's the matter with you?" Marcel took out a white ticket, sent a subpoena. Tony was wandering in a beautiful reverie, but was completely shattered by this subpoena. He immediately looked a little ugly, pressed his head, and didn't expect this woman to be a trouble. "You must testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Can you show me your ID?" Tony looked at her, obviously taking a chance. "You want to see my ID?" Marcel showed a different smile. "Yeah, he likes papers," Happy said. Marcel took out a 5-pointed star badge, which in Ronan's view looked like Captain America's shield. Of course it was a pocket version. "Do you still like it now?" Marcel asked with a smile. "Yeah," Tony replied in distress, then turned to look at Happy. "How far are we from Washington?" "Washington, 250 miles. As soon as he finished speaking, Tony stepped on the accelerator and rushed out. Seeing this, Luo Ning had a strange expression on his face. Now even the car is driven by Tony himself. Tony is more like Happy's driver and bodyguard. It's the other way around. "Ma'am, do you have any thoughts about me?" "But I'm not that kind of person," Luo Ning said shamelessly. Marcel smiled slightly, and took out another subpoena. "Well, Mr. Luo Ning, I do have thoughts about you, and the idea is that you keep this subpoena well, so that you don't lose it." "Nani, what about playing with snakes?" "There is no such thing as a movie plot. Like Tony, testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning." Seeing him standing still, Marcel raised his eyebrows and said, "Do you like the certificate? Do you want me to take it out for you to see?" Luo Ning took the summons, shook his head bitterly, and was alone in the wind. Washington, D.C. Luo Ning asked Thomas to send him to Washington overnight, and rushed to the hearing immediately after a night's rest. He was doubting his life along the way. What did he do wrong? Why was it targeted by the military committee? "Thomas, what do you think these guys are for?" Obviously, in order to allow soldiers to obtain the physical fitness of Soldier 76, the military had a super soldier plan before, but it failed, and created monsters like abominations. They think that Soldier 76 was injected with enhanced serum, the perfect soldier, so I asked you to estimate this time to ask if you have that kind of serum. Thomas analyzed. Luo Ning nodded. The analysis made sense. He was the closest person to Soldier 76. No matter what he explained, others thought his relationship with Soldier 76 was extraordinary, and the military even believed that Soldier 76 was what he created by himself came from some kind of enhanced serum. "It's really sick," Luo Ning scolded. "If he really has that serum, why doesn't he build an army of super soldiers to protect himself? If he really has it, can the military committee hire him?" "Do not make jokes. When I came to the hearing hall, I bumped into Tony." Tony said with a look of surprise, "Ronan, you see me bored and come to accompany me." Thinking too much, Luo Ning took out the summons. "I was invited too." Tony was about to laugh, but held back. How could the military committee only pay attention to him, the flying Iron Man? Soldier 76 is what they should pay attention to the most. After all, it takes a lot of money to mass-produce Iron Man suits, but the cost of strengthening the serum is not high. As long as you master the development method, it is very simple. Because of Luo Ning's arrival, his heart suddenly felt a lot more balanced, and he felt a little better. Luo Ning really wanted to beat him up. He used him as a background board before, and now he is still laughing at him. "Tony, it's time to sit down." At this time, little Pepper came over, and she was also surprised when she saw Luo Ning. Mr. Luo Ning, why are you here? Luo Ning smiled wryly. I, a countryman, want to come to Washington to see the world. Pepper obviously didn't believe it. If Tony hadn't lied to her that she would come to Washington to play, she wouldn't have come here. What's the point of the hearing? It's better to sit in the office and soak up the sun with a cup of coffee. Ronan was also invited by the military commission, Tony said. What? Pepper was very surprised. How Luo Ning was invited by the military commission to attend the hearing. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure it out. She cast a puzzled look, and Luo Ning spread his hands, jokingly said, the movie I made may be very lethal, and even the military commission is scared. Okay, let's take our seats. Little Pepper grinned from ear to ear, amused. Luo Ning walked, and the front row was full of soldiers with many military ranks, and there were many reporters standing around. They were taking pictures with their cameras. The hearing was extremely solemn, and Luo Ning found that he and Tony were in the front row, very close to the chief. Sitting on the high platform, all of them are big men from the military committee, all of them have solemn faces and serious expressions, as if everyone here owes them money. To be honest, Luo Ning wanted to leave immediately. Why should he come here to see the faces of these guys? So why not do it yourself if you have the ability? What to do with him and Tony? Luo Ning was willing to endure it if he had the strength, but what else would these guys do besides yelling at his subordinates? Oh, by the way, it is also a skill to put pressure on civilians. The senator named Stern, in the middle always had a bitter face, and Ronan got angry when he saw it, and really wanted to rush up and punch him. Isn't it just a broken senator? What qualifications do you have to show off? Senator Stern mentioned Iron Man first, and Tony turned around and chatted with Pepper in the back row, not taking him seriously at all. Immediately stopped the previous narration, and turned Tony's attention back to the hearing. Just like in the elementary school classroom, the teacher shut up the whispering students and turned their attention to the classroom, but Tony's performance was even more serious. In order to be arrogant, he was completely treated as air. Mr. Stark, can we continue the previous topic? Mr. Stark, please pay attention. Tony felt that it would be too much to disrespect the senator and damage his image in the outside world. After all, this was going to be on the news, so he turned around and asked with a hippie smile, what's the matter, dear? Puff. Luo Ning almost laughed out loud, although this line appeared in the movie, but hearing it with his own ears now has a different flavor and is even more funny. Even at the hearing, Tony always acted unruly. I'm afraid he is the only one in the United States who dares to do so. Stern's mouth was twisted in anger, and he held back his breath and said, can you listen carefully? Of course. Do you have a special weapon? Stern asked. I didn't. Tony replied immediately. You haven't. I don't. It depends on how you define weapon. Stern leaned back in his chair and said impatiently, Iron Man weapons. My device does not fit this description. So how would you describe him? Stern asked. My description of it is the exact definition of it, Senator. What is it? High-tech prosthetics. This is the best description I think. Tony said. It's a weapon, Mr. Stark. Tony was also a little irritable, blushing and said thickly, please, if your priority is really the happiness of American citizens. Before finishing speaking, Stern interrupted. My priority is to give Iron Man weapons to American citizens. Tony said resolutely. Then don't think about it. I am Iron Man, and I am the suitor one. Turning in the Iron Man suit is to hand over myself. This is equivalent to prostitution or prostitution. It depends on you which continent does it belong to, don't even try to get it. His speech caused the audience to burst into laughter, and Luo Ning couldn't help but want to laugh, but compared to this, he was even more angry. Nima was enough background board at the Stark Expo, and he had to be the background board at the hearing. Play. Listen, I'm not an expert. Stern was outraged. In terms of prostitution, of course not, you're a senator, please. Tony slammed the table. The audience burst into laughter again. Stern was extremely annoyed, loosened his tie, blushed and said, I'm not a weapons expert, but we have invited a weapons expert, and I'm summoning Justin Hammer, our current master arms contractor. At this time, a thin man in a blue suit came and sat next to Tony, a few seats away. Please record that I saw Mr. Hammer walking into the venue, and I was wondering if there would be any real experts present. When Tony heard that the so-called weapons expert was a half can of Hammer, he retorted on the spot. Hammer took a sip of the water glass indifferently, and just moved the microphone to his mouth to retort. Luo Ning stretched out his hand and said to him, Hey, wait a minute. Hammer had just cleared his throat when he was interrupted before he could say a word, which made him very embarrassed. Immediately afterwards, Luo Ning looked at Senator Stern and asked, "So the senator invited me to let me listen to your nonsense?" Stern still said with a straight face, "Mr. Luo Ning, we will talk about you later." Later, what time will it be? Stern gestured with his hands, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour, anyway, things have to be dealt with one by one. Sorry, I don't have time if you have time. If you want to ask anything, just ask now. If you can't, I'll leave and make an appointment another day. Luo Ning was also short of breath. Did he really think he couldn't do anything for a day? Even if he really has nothing to do, even if he stays at home and plays games, even if he sleeps, it's not an excuse for the military commission to waste his time. Mr. Luo Ning, you think this is watching a movie, make an appointment another day. Stern had just been bullied by Tony, and he was already in a bad mood. He didn't expect that a filmmaker would ignore him, treat the hearing as a play, and come and go whenever he wants. Luo Ning looked around and pointed out one by one, "Isn't it? The actors, scenes, plots, and shots are all there. If there are any shortcomings, I think Tony can wear his Iron Man suit. Iron Man the second part can be completed." Good idea. Tony nodded yes. All the hearing personnel opened their mouths slightly. They didn't expect Mr. Luo Ning, who has always been low-key, to speak so arrogantly, no worse than Tony. The reporters didn't have time to sigh. They recorded the video from beginning to end, and they were all thankful that they had recorded this wonderful segment. 10,000 mud horses galloped past Stern's heart. Did these two eat explosives today? His mouth was breathing fire all the time, so let him be ignored, but he still regarded the solemn and sacred hearing as acting. Mr. Luo Ning, please pay attention to your words and deeds. Ronan shrugged and stood up. So are you letting me go? Or are you asking me a question? Tony showed approval. Sure enough, he didn't make friends, that's exactly what happened. No way. Senator Stern had no choice but to say to Hammer, "Mr. Hammer, you will speak later." Hammer felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten shong, and he had no chance to say anything against Tony, and he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Seeing this, Luo Ning sat down. A majestic time traveler can't heal a little senator. Even if this little senator is still the chairman of the military committee, so what? Don't be cowardly if you have the ability, come over and give him a bite. He picked up the glass and took a big sip of water to gather strength for the next verbal battle. Today is to let these self-righteous guys know that he is not only a filmmaker, but also a filmmaker with backbone. The original serious hearing, because of the wonderful performance of Tony and Ronan, the atmosphere was very strange for a while, sometimes full of laughter, sometimes full of enthusiasm. The senator has been deflated more than once, but he has nothing to say in order to maintain his public image. Mr. Luo Ning, what is your relationship with Soldier 76? Stern looked at Luo Ning. He's a superhero from a script I wrote, and I'm supposed to be his dad, Ronan replied. What I'm asking is what is the relationship between Soldier 76 and you in reality? Then make it clear. The question is not clear, how do you want me to answer? Luo Ning said impatiently, you should ask Soldier 76 this question. I also wonder why the characters in the movie would come out. It's just too weird. How do you explain it, Winston? I would also like to know the answer. Mr. Senator, can you tell me where Winston is now, so that I can pay a visit, and of course I will buy a large box of peanut butter. There was another burst of laughter at the hearing. This hearing was really interesting, unlike the previous ones, which were lifeless. Stern felt that his head was a little dazed with anger, and he waited for a while before continuing to ask, I don't want to entangle you with this, just ask you, do you have a kind of enhanced serum that can enhance human physical fitness? Serum, like Soldier 76. I said no, maybe you won't believe it, why don't we think about it differently? If you have the formula of that serum, that is to say, you can mass-produce Soldier 76, then, will you still be in crisis? I mean, is this possible? But any normal person will use blood serum to train a few bodyguards for himself, but I almost died a few times. It stands to reason that I was protected by many soldiers 76. Those mercenaries should not even see me, but they came to my house blatantly and took me to the mercenary base. Is it possible? Ronan asked. Stern was speechless, as if that was the reason. If I'm a little bit ambitious, I'm afraid it's not just as simple as training a few bodyguards. I mean, it's possible. Then what do you think will be the consequences? If I have this ambition, do you think I will come to this hearing and sit here with you chat? It seemed to be the case. Stern frowned and fell into doubt, but if there was no serum, where was Soldier 76 born from? From a movie. Only a fool would believe it. Is there anything else you want to ask the senator? If not, I have to leave. I have to go back to cook. Don't look at me like this. There is no nanny at home, and I don't like eating in restaurants. What's more, I don't like to order takeaway. The food I cook is the best. Luo Ning answered those who cast suspicious glances around him. In fact, he was looking for a reason to escape. It is estimated that the senator has nothing to ask, and it is meaningless to stay here. He does not want to continue to be a background for Tony. Watch Tony pretend. Stern didn't speak for a while, and he really didn't have anything to ask. He invited Ronan to ask about the serum, and he gave an answer. Although it was far from what he thought, it made sense. The most important thing is that he has no evidence to prove that the serum actually exists, because there is no such serum in the world except Soldier 76 itself. The military has also searched for Soldier 76, but they can't find it anywhere trace. It was precisely because he couldn't find Soldier 76 that he had no choice but to find Luo Ning, but the result was not satisfactory, and he still had to spend time on finding Soldier 76. As long as he found Soldier 76, all the puzzles would be solved. Since there is no problem, Mr. Hammer, next is your show time. Luo Ning looked towards Han Mo and walked towards Han Mo. Han Mo consciously got up and moved out of the way, but his heart was full of waves. He didn't expect a filmmaker to be so awesome, and he was so angry that the senator was stunned. There is no other way. Can't be bothered, can't be bothered. Tony gave Ronan a thumbs up under the table. Good job, that's what you should do. Don't lower your posture to show these bullying guys. These guys are just bullying. Once you bow your head, then never think about it, keep your head up, and once you're aggressive initially, these guys will run away from you later on. With a company as big as Overwatch, and another terrifying identity, one should behave like a man, and Tony found himself admiring Ronan more and more. He can't be cowardly, he should fight these guys to the end. As soon as he got home and turned on the TV, Luo Ning saw himself, and couldn't help applauding for himself, so stylish. Thomas also admired it from the bottom of his heart. Mr. Luo Ning, your performance at the hearing is estimated to be a sensation across the country. It makes sense, Ronan said without shame. Immediately afterwards, Tony's performance also made people's blood boil. His words drove the hearing personnel around him, and he broke his face with Stern. Everyone applauded for him. Stern was suffocated just after being teased by Ronan, but now he was directly detonated by Tony, and he did not hesitate to swear in front of the media. You, Mr. Stark, you. When Stern said this, the other senators looked at him in surprise, thinking that this approach was not advisable. After all, he was a member of a government agency, but they could understand. They didn't talk to Ronan and Tony, and they were all so angry at their arrogance, let alone Stern, who had been talking to them all the time. His lungs probably exploded. Tony walked out in style, and the hearing personnel along the way stepped aside and applauded. While shaking hands with the people on both sides, he said domineeringly to the camera, I am a man of the people, and I will serve this country willingly for myself. I have already proved one thing, that is, I am the one who is most good at making fun of myself, people. After speaking, Tony took off his glasses neatly, turned around smartly, and disappeared into the camera. It's still you, Iron Man, who will pretend. Luo Ning felt that he had only learned the superficiality of Tony in terms of acting aggressively. Tony's talent for acting aggressively was unmatched, and he, Luo Ning, felt ashamed. Undoubtedly, Tony turned the hearing into a personal performance show for all TV audiences. The audience couldn't hold back after watching it. They all felt that Tony had a personality, and also felt that the previous filmmaker had a lot of backbone, and he was determined not to bow to the military commission. This undoubtedly allowed them to gain a group of middle-aged and elderly fans. In the eyes of the masses, the military commission is supreme, and no one dares to openly tear themselves apart with the military commission. However, Luo Ning and Tony did not take the military commission seriously and acted willfully. But they can't. These two people did something that they never dared to do in their entire lives, and they didn't even dare to think about it, so they felt very comfortable. The people are the masters of the country. At this time, there are countless viewers, scratching their heads and shouting in front of the TV, cheering and going crazy. The hearing was full of uproar, and Tony Stark and Ronan had been on the Google search list for a long time. Luo Ning doesn't like to pay attention to these things. He puts all his attention on the filming of Reinhardt. Wait. Film shooting is divided into 3 stages. The first stage has been completed. In the first stage, it is necessary to consider whether the props, scenery and other factors are suitable for the actors and the environment, so there are many times of restarting, and the state of the actors with many scenes has declined, so the director decided to let the whole crew rest for 3 days, and then proceed to the second stage. The second phase of shooting. Luo Ning expressed his understanding of this, but the last time he visited the set, he found that there were some problems during the filming process. In fact, most of them can be ignored, but there is one thing that does not suit him very much. That's the look and the movement of the lead actor Dick Rogier during his performance. Dick Rogier's acting skills are actually not to be picked, and his own conditions are also in line with Reinhardt's image. He has blonde hair, a burly figure, and has won many awards, but he cannot fully demonstrate Reinhardt's heroism come out, always almost feel. That bit of drama in the early stage is not a big problem, but after that, a fierce battle will break out. If there is still something lacking in the battle, the climax will not satisfy the audience. It may be a pity to shoot it like this. Luo Ning would never allow such flaws in his works, so he decided to ask Dick to come out and have a chat. Although he couldn't help Dick with his acting skills, he could explain Reinhardt's background and let Dick fundamentally understand what kind of person Reinhardt is and how to play him well. So he called Dick. "Oh, Mr. Ronan, what's the matter?" The voiceover there was very light, as if something happy had happened. "Are you free? I want to invite you to the coffee shop." "Oh, didn't I have 3 days off, so I went abroad." "Sir, you may not know that my hobby is racing, and I have achieved good results in racing, so today I come to Monaco to participate in the F1 Grand Prix. I hope I can got a good ranking. Sir, can you bless me over there?" F1 Monaco Grand Prix. Luo Ning's head hummed, and he had to go abroad to participate in a racing competition after 3 days of rest. Is he so sick? "If you don't race, will you kill the star people?" Sir. The voiceover there was repeated several times before Luo Ning came back to his senses. "Don't participate." "Why don't you participate? I'm already in the preparation room, and the game will start in more than an hour." "Hang up Mr. Ha first, and I'll call you after the game is over." Beep, beep. Luo Ning was at a loss with his mobile phone. What should he do? "I didn't want to get involved in this matter, because Tony can solve it by himself, but Dick is a racing driver, in other words Dick may be attacked by the whip, and Tony can't even take care of himself when he is not wearing Mark 5. There is no time to take care of others." In the movie, the whip rope destroyed several racing cars, just like a madman. If Dick was attacked by the whip, even if he didn't die and be disabled, he couldn't accept it. Once Dick stops the production, it means that Reinhardt cannot be filmed. If the actors are changed midway, the filming will have to start from the beginning, which will not only waste a lot of time, but also lose tens of millions of dollars in vain. No matter how rich he is, he can't afford such a waste, not to mention that he has to rely on Reinhardt to save his life. How can he treat his future as a trifling matter? There is still more than an hour. Luo Ning muttered to himself, it must be too late for the flight, so he called Thomas. And he came to the basement. There was no light in the dark basement, so Luo Ning walked down the stairs and flicked the switch. With countless lights shining, the basement immediately became bright, and every dark corner was illuminated. A beautifully streamlined plane looms in front of you. That's right, this is his private jet. It sounds very high-end, but in fact it is very high-end. Airplanes occupy most of the basement area. The basement was originally built to store private jets. There is no other purpose. There is a separate warehouse for storing things, so the basement looks empty. This is enough to prove his extravagance. After buying such a large piece of land, the plane only occupies 2/3 of the area, and the remaining 1/3 is left empty. The extravagant and corrupt aristocratic life is undoubtedly revealed. Luo Ning doesn't think so. Buy a big one or not a small one. What if you buy a small one that can't fit in the plane? After eating the soil for a year, it should come in handy. Most of the time, he doesn't need it. Usually he doesn't go out, and a sports car is enough for him to go out. Even if the distance is far away, he will choose to take a flight, which is convenient. Walking to the wall next to the wing, Ronan lifted the hemispherical plastic shell, which covered a red button. Press lightly. Boom. A ray of light came in, and when I looked up, there was a crack in the dome, and the crack became bigger and bigger, and finally it became an open-air basement, and the roof disappeared. At the same time, the square ground where the plane was on slowly lifted up, and with the help of mechanical power, the plane was slowly sent up to the dome. One side of the wall was cracked and a ladder emerged from the wall. Luo Ning closed his palms and nodded. It's still good after not using it for so long. It's not in vain to spend so much money on him. At this time Thomas ran in and rubbed his hands excitedly. Wow! You can fly the plane again. Are you sure you can still drive it now? Luo Ning asked. Don't worry, Mr. Luo Ning, I can drive everything safely. Thomas said with a smile. So, the two climbed the ladder and boarded the plane. Luo Ning was very worried. Thomas felt very unreliable every time he smiled, but the situation was urgent and he couldn't make a choice. The plane was flying in the sky like a bird, and Luo Ning seemed to be as stable as an old dog, but he was in a panic. What Thomas held was not the joystick, but his life. Mr. Luo Ning, what are you going to do in such a hurry to go to Monaco? One more word and I'll deduct 1 day's salary from you. Luo Ning was flustered. Talking would distract people's attention. He didn't want to talk about himself to death. Thomas shut his mouth tightly. In fact, he didn't want to ask, but it's just too strange. Mr. Luo Ning, who never even leaves the house, is interested in going abroad today. Are foreign games more fun than domestic ones? Luo Ning took out his mobile phone and checked the itinerary. Based on the speed of the plane, it only takes 1 hour to get to Monaco Airport, and then it takes about 1 minute to stop the car to go to the F10 Grand Prix. He can barely arrive before the start of the race. What a traffic jam. Luo Ning clasped his hands together and said to himself, God bless Dick. God bless Dick. Monaco is a small country, which is mainly reflected in its size. In fact, Monaco has a developed economy, dense population, and luxurious folk customs. It is not an exaggeration to call it an aristocratic country. Naturally, Luo Ning didn't have time to appreciate exotic customs, so he had to rush to the F1 Grand Prix. Driver, can you drive faster? Looking at his watch, Luo Ning was anxious like an ant on a hot pot. The feeling of racing against time was really uncomfortable, and at the same time, he was frantically testing on the verge of losing tens of millions of dollars. If Dick was injured in any way, tens of millions of dollars would be lost. Thomas curled his lips, disliking the driver's driving skills. Of course, there was nothing to say. The boss kept pushing. If he kept urging, it would be bad for the driver to take them elsewhere with bad intentions. The driver was annoyed a lot and kept urging him endlessly, so he said immediately, if you have the ability, why don't you drive? Wait for your words. Thomas changed from the co-pilot to the driver's seat, which made the driver uncomfortable. Seeing that he could drive, the driver muttered unhappily, and then sat on the passenger seat. You guys are so rude. You really think this car is yours, so you can drive it if you want? The driver said dissatisfied. Thomas was too lazy to talk. The old driver was possessed. His free coordination was extremely exquisite, his speed increased to 120 yards, and he was able to shuttle freely on the busy street. The middle-aged driver sitting on the co-pilot was stunned. Is this man darker than ink so awesome? Seeing that the driver turned his head and his eyes were shining, the corners of Thomas's mouth slightly raised, revealing a big shiny white tooth. Against the extreme black background, that tooth shone with pure white luster. The driver still pouted and muttered, are you so good at driving? Are you capable of flying a plane? Luo Ning thought he was noisy and directly took out a wad of cash to him. Seeing the money, the driver suddenly turned from worry to joy, laughed so hard that he couldn't close his mouth, and kept praising him for being handsome and rich. Luo Ning immediately labeled him the three vulgar. The so-called three vulgar is vulgar, vulgar, vulgar. Sorry, we just got off a private jet. Thomas finally couldn't take it anymore. Is it because he only knows how to drive this broken car? Whether it is running on the ground, flying in the sky, or swimming in the water, as long as the function is normal, he can drive away. Is the title of ace pilot in the sea, land and air just a waste of fame? Private plane. The driver was dumbfounded. If he was skeptical at first, then he had to believe now that this man was a big spender, and his words and deeds made him look like a big boss. Wait. The driver looked back at Luo Ning a few more times, his eyes suddenly widened, and he stammered. You are, the one on the news, the Mr. Luo Ning who fell out with the U.S. military commission. Luo Ning shook his head with a smile. He didn't expect his deeds to spread abroad. I'm absolutely right, you are Mr. Luo Ning, the CEO of Overwatch Films. The driver fumbled for something in his clothes, and finally took out a mobile phone, clicked on the photo album, found a photo to enlarge, and pointed it to Luo Ning with an excited expression. It was a group photo of Ronan and a female fan. The female fan was holding a figure of Soldier 76 and showing a sweet smile. You must be right. You are Mr. Luo Ning. My daughter likes to watch the Overwatch series movies the most. She went to New York to participate in your event last year. The girl in the photo is my daughter Fanny. The world is so small. Luo Ning sighed, never thought that this female fan named Fanny would be his daughter. It was after the premiere of Soldier 76, an event held by Overwatch Films to give back to fans. The female fan was very lively and beautiful, and she was one of the few fans who could leave an impression on him. After chatting for a while, Thomas drove the car to the destination. After bidding farewell to the female fan's father, Luo Ning and Thomas walked towards the scene. There were guards at the entrance, and tickets were required to enter to watch the event. How much is the ticket? Can I buy it now? Luo Ning asked hastily. Sorry sir, the tickets are sold out. The doorman replied. At this time, a young man and a woman appeared not far away. The boy held 2 tickets in his hand, and they came talking and laughing. Luo Ning walked over and smiled and said, Sir, can you sell me the 2 tickets in your hand? I will pay double the price. The boy was taken aback for a moment, then glanced at the girl who was snuggling beside him, and said firmly, No. Luo Ning raised 3 fingers, 3 times. The boy hesitated for a moment, then glanced at the girl who was pouting and expressing her dissatisfaction, and said in a calm voice, No. Luo Ning tapped his forehead lightly, then how about 5 times? Make a deal. The boy handed over the ticket, but in the end he couldn't resist the temptation. Seeing how unmotivated he was as a male ticket, and seeing Qian's eyes open, the girl stomped her feet angrily, and punched him in the chest with a small fist. After getting the tickets, Ronan and Thomas turned and left. Luo Ning's flashing profile made the girl suddenly think of something. She suddenly shouted, It's you. Mr. Luo Ning who is watching. Leaving her boyfriend behind, she rushed forward, blocking Luo Ning's way. The boy suddenly felt that he had lost face. With so many people around, the female ticket actually ran away with other men. How decent is it? The girl raised her chin slightly and looked at Luo Ning timidly, like a little girl. Dear Mr. Luo Ning, can you take a photo with me? Luo Ning frowned slightly. Through the gate, he saw that the game inside hadn't started yet, so he said, Okay, hurry up. After taking the group photo, the girl's face was filled with happiness. After looking at the photo again and again, which girl doesn't like a talented and capable young CEO? When I go back, I can show off in front of my girlfriends. Her sisters all look forward to taking a photo with Mr. Luo Ning, but they have never had the opportunity because they can't even see Mr. Luo Ning. The girl looked like a nympho, and she kept staring at the photo on the way. The boy was so angry that he took out $500 from his pocket, gently passed the tip of his nose, and smelled the fragrance of the banknotes, which made him feel better. The girl's shout just now attracted everyone's attention. Those who hadn't paid attention to Luo Ning immediately locked onto him, put down what they were doing and rushed over. Ronan and Thomas quickened their pace and entered the gate before they chased them. Those people didn't have tickets, so they were naturally stopped by the guards. Entering the scene, the ring-shaped field was full of spectators, and the spectators waved flags and cheered for their favorite racers. Before the race started, the scene was already boiling, but it would be so exciting to start the racing. Ronan and Thomas found a place to sit down, but Thomas was puzzled, came to Monaco just to watch the F1 Grand Prix. He doesn't remember that the boss is interested in racing cars. Everyone was paying attention to the racers who appeared one by one, so basically no one paid attention to them, which saved Ronan a lot of trouble. Ronan pointed to a racing driver entering the track and asked Thomas, "Is that Dick? The one in the red and black racing suit?" Thomas looked in the direction he pointed, and after looking at it for a long time, he replied, "It's very similar, it seems to be." The racers take their positions and wait for the red light to flash. But suddenly, a group of people appeared on the track. There were reporters taking pictures and security escorts. Their focus was on the man in the middle who was wearing a dark blue racing suit. And that man is Iron Man. Tony unreasonably snatched a racer's place, so angry that the racer dropped his helmet and left angrily. Under normal circumstances, Tony would definitely not come to participate in this kind of racing competition. He did so just to go crazy and seek excitement at the last moment of his life. It is not possible to stop the game in this situation. As the red light came on, the racing cars on the track rushed out like 10,000 arrows. The speed was so fast that people's eyes couldn't follow them. The audience waved their flags to cheer and shouted the driver's name, and the atmosphere exploded. Everyone's eyes were on the track, on their favorite racer, while Luo Ning looked around, looking for the man called Whiplash. It's just that the scene is too big, and there are too many staff maintaining order, and they are all wearing orange overalls, so it is difficult to find the whip. In the middle of the race, a staff member stepped over the guardrail and came to the track, as if strolling in the garden, as loose as possible. "Look, a staff member entered the track, doesn't he want to live?" "Oh, look, dear, what is that? What is this man up to?" Luo Ning didn't notice it at first, but through the screaming and shouting of the surrounding audience, he saw a staff in orange clothing appear on the track on the other side of the track. The staff member took off his helmet, and his long greasy hair, which hadn't been washed for an unknown amount of time, fluttered in the wind. It is similar to the energy supply device of the arc reactor. It's Whip Suo Yifan Vanki. What should come is finally here. Luo Ning quickly left the auditorium and found an empty corner to complete the transformation. He couldn't let the whip damage his tens of millions of dollars, let alone waste so much shooting time. The whip rope double held electrified metal long whips, crackling, and walked slowly in the opposite direction, with a toothpick in his mouth, pulling like 258,000. The audience panicked. If they thought this person was committing suicide before, now they would think that this person is an absolutely dangerous element with unstable factors. Who knows if this person has other weapons on him? Just the twinkling of these two lights, like a few lightning whips attached to the thunderbolt, is enough to frighten unarmed ordinary people like them. A racing car rushed towards him, and the driver didn't know that there was a monster waiting for him in front of him. Even if he knew, he sprinted at a high speed, and he didn't have time to react. The whip has long been unable to contain the anger in his heart. No matter whether the opponent is Tony or not, he will raise the electric whip with the power of violent thunder and lightning. The racing driver panicked. When he saw the thick electric whip, his eyes widened and his heart was filled with turbulent waves. No matter how he tried to control it, the racing car couldn't dodge it. Seeing this scene, the crowd outside the track exclaimed in alarm. Some women even covered their eyes, unwilling to see this cruel scene, and left the auditorium one after another, not daring to stay here for a long time. Who knows what this madman will do next? Of course, there are also some bold young men who take out their mobile phones to record videos. If such wonderful clips are uploaded on YouTube before the news reports, they will surely gain a wave of popularity quickly. The staff did not dare to approach. Their duty was only to maintain order, and they had no means to deal with this situation, so they still had to wait for the police to come. Just when the racing driver was desperate and about to give up resistance, a huge shadow flashed in front of his eyes, and then the guy holding the electric whip disappeared. Gone. After being dazed for a second, the racer drove away as usual. Could it be that he had just hallucinated? The audience burst into earth-shattering cries when they saw Winston flying towards and flying away with that dangerous guy. It's Winston. Winston is here to save us. Their hearts were extremely excited, and their panic immediately calmed down, and they calmly took out their mobile phones to take pictures of this breathtaking scene. The appearance of Overwatch heroes can always bring people a sense of security, and justice must prevail. Thomas shook his head and finally understood. The boss is Winston. Who is that Soldier 76? Am I destined to be the embodiment of Soldier 76? Thomas stared at the suitcase in his arms, his eyes glowed with elite light. Yes, I am the embodiment of justice and the judge of evil. Except for the fastest car that saw the whip, the other racers didn't know what happened just now, so the race continued as usual, and nothing changed because of the whip. Winston used the jetpack to bring the whip to the outside of the scene. When the people outside saw a gorilla descending from the sky, they all had brilliant eyes and approached one after another, each one getting bolder. It's dangerous here, get out of the way. Luo Ning roared. Under his roar, the crowd saw a guy with an electric whip get up from the ground opposite Winston. Realizing the danger, they retreated one after another and took pictures and videos at a safe distance. Although he didn't know what happened, Bian Suo knew that the gorilla in front of him had ruined his plan. The most likely move to kill Tony, so fail. He spat out the toothpick in his mouth and stared at Winston fiercely. No matter who you are, you will pay the blood price for your actions. The whip rope raised the electric whip, and swung it down at Luo Ning. The barrier is activated. Ronan put down the barrier launcher, a bubble-like barrier lingered around him, and the whip failed to cause any damage to the barrier. At this moment, all the spectators watching the car race ran out, and the crowded scene immediately became empty. Those racers were in a daze. What happened? Why did the audience disappear all of a sudden? Isn't racing exciting enough? Or is it because there are better things than racing elsewhere? Whiplash stared at him, not expecting that this barrier could block his electric whip. The corners of Luo Ning's mouth curled up slightly. Then, come and taste my lightning power. The Tesla cannon is aimed at the whip, and the trigger is pulled, and the gorgeous turbulent current is ejected from the muzzle, buzzing. The whip didn't dodge, just stood there quietly. The electric current extended to his body without making any ripples, like a breeze blowing on his body, without any feeling. What? Luo Ning found it unbelievable that the powerful electric current emitted by the Tesla cannon could not cause damage to the whip rope. You must know that even an abomination with strong defense will be numb from the electric shock. If it deals with humans, it can be instantly stunned, right? The whip raised his chin triumphantly. Your electric current will only charge my battle armor, thereby accumulating more electric energy for my electric whip, and bursting out with stronger power. Swinging both hands, the outline of the electric whip became thicker, and the current attached to the whip became more full and violent, and the current intensity increased sharply. Play snakeskin. Luo Ning didn't expect that the armor made of whip rope would have the function of absorbing and transforming the external current. The current intensity of the Tesla cannon is so high that it will electrocute people to death. Snapped. The whip was swung down, and the current surged, so violent that it would destroy everything it touched. The barrier instantly produced fine cracks, and the second whip was swung down, and the barrier was completely shattered. The barrier that can only be destroyed by 6 cannonballs only took 2 whips. With the jetpack in charge, Ronan could only use the gorilla's amazing jumping power to jump away, keeping a certain distance from the whip to ensure that the whip would not hit him. Ugly, your grandpa Soldier 76 is here. Thomas whistled angrily and made his debut, attracting the shocking gazes of countless people. Wow, Soldier 76 is here too. Are the Overwatch heroes going to fight side by side? This guy is dead. Soldier 76 and Winston teamed up will definitely beat him to pieces. The blood of the crowd is full of enthusiasm. Although they did not participate in the battle, their thoughts are bound together with the heroes of Overwatch. They can deeply feel the belief conveyed by Overwatch. It is a belief in victory that will resolutely eliminate the evil forces. Blue bullets pierced the sky, and the whip rope quickly danced the electric whip, dancing in a circle in front of him, blocking all the bullets. What? Thomas had a black question mark on his face. He didn't expect that this guy could block bullets by waving an electric whip. Not even a single bullet could penetrate his defense line. The crowd showed concern. They didn't expect this guy's high-tech equipment to be so powerful that even Soldier 76's energy bullets couldn't penetrate it. A sharp look flashed across Luo Ning's eyes. If it was a real Soldier 76, he would definitely be able to break through the Whiplash defense with a real heavy pulse rifle. But since Thomas appeared as Soldier 76, he could only use Winston. There is no other way to fight in the form of war. Under Thomas's restraint, they can look for opportunities to attack. The legendary super soldiers are nothing more than that. In the hands of me, Ivan Vanki, you are all weak bugs. Taking advantage of his pretentious time, Luo Ning jumped into the air and bombarded him. Unexpectedly, the whip rope had expected him to do this, turned around and wrapped his arm with an electric whip, and the powerful electric current shocked him. His entire arm was paralyzed, and the electric current was transmitted to the whole body. The originally powerful arm weakened instantly, and the unbalanced body was pulled hard by the whip and smashed to the ground. Boom! Winston's huge body slammed into the ground, creating a deep hole in the ground and kicking up a cloud of dust. The whip would have been smashed into a pulp, but the plan failed. Originally, the electric current provided by the whip armor was not enough to pose such a big threat to him, but the Tesla cannon provided it with powerful electric energy, causing the power of the electric whip to rise steadily. This whip made every part of him numb, and he lost even the strength to stand up. Luo Ning was still conscious, but he couldn't control his limbs. He could only see the lower body of the whip, an electric whip dragged on the ground, and the black-rimmed glasses that fell aside. There is still a lot of power to unleash the original fury, but unfortunately, so far, the anger value has only accumulated to 20%. Does it have to make him transform into Soldier 76 in full view? The whip rope waved the electric whip with one hand, blocking most of the blue bullets, and the occasional bullets that passed through only made a crisp sound when they hit the armor. The crowd watched this scene in disbelief. Who would have thought that the two Overwatch heroes could not subdue this guy wielding an electric whip? Winston was so shocked that he collapsed to the ground, unable to do even the simple act of getting up. The pulse energy bullet that can pierce anything in the movie can't pierce the electric whip defense line now. Even if it passes through, it can't penetrate the armor when it falls on it. Soldier 76, quickly support Winston. Winston, stand up and resist. Winston, we will always stand behind you and be your strong backing. The crowd cheered and cheered. Even though Winston fell, their courage did not decrease at all. Instead, they became stronger and helped the heroes of the watch in the way they could. They approached aggressively and threw everything they could throw at the whip. Stones, wine bottles, vegetables, all the things that could be used were thrown out by them. The whip rope's body was smashed gaudy by various things, including the bright red of tomatoes and the bright yellow of eggs. It didn't feel like hitting the armor, so the whip rope ignored it and slowly approached Winston. I said, you broke my plan, and I will make you pay in blood. As soon as the words fell, his head was hit by a milk bottle, and white milk flowed down his forehead. His fierce eyes suddenly locked on the man, woman, and child in front of him. The crowd subconsciously took 2 steps back. Very well, you managed to annoy me. The whip rope ignored Winston, who was lying on the ground, and continued to move forward, but with a crack, something was crushed under his feet. In an instant, a red light flashed in front of Luo Ning's eyes. The anger value has reached 200%, which is seriously overloaded. Seriously overloaded. Please release now. Please release now. The crowd backed away again and again in fright. The whips raised the electric whips, and their faces were extremely hideous. Hey, you guys are looking for death, you can't blame me. The whip is merciless, even if it knows that the other party is a civilian with no power to restrain the chicken, it will still kill. Roar. Winston in the state of primitive rage opened his huge mouth, and the violent air wave made the whip unsteady. The whip fell to nothing, and the crowd hurriedly fled. After stabilizing his figure, Whipcord turned around, and there was only a golden-eyed gorilla flashing a golden arc in his vision. However, he did not panic, but arrogantly raised the electric whip, wrapping around Winston's body. It's only a fool who makes the same mistake. Whiplash grinned. Really, Ronan easily tore off the electric whip on his body. This current was not enough to cause damage to Winston, who was in a state of rage. It was even more powerful to release the original rage when the anger was overloaded. He deeply realized this, and his limbs and bones the power is much stronger than before. Now his defensive power is even stronger than that of Hulk, but he does not have Hulk's recovery ability. Winston's performance stabilized the uneasy mood of the crowd. In the movie, Winston was in a state of rage, but he killed all the other orangutans, which was more than enough to deal with a human. Thomas heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Winston made a big move. Otherwise, he, Soldier 76, would be embarrassing. He would not be able to show the strength of Soldier 76 in front of the crowd. Any soldier could replace him. Jill the thief would be ashamed. While everyone's attention was not on him, he slipped away. Look, Soldier 76 got cold feet. That's called a strategic retreat. How come? Whiplash looked desperate. The electric whip was his biggest reliance on this armor. If even the electric whip couldn't harm the gorilla, then the only thing waiting for him was death. Unwilling to fail like this, he frantically swiped the electric whip and whipped it on Winston's body. Ronan only felt itchy, which was quite comfortable. Several police cars drove up. Luo Ning's eyes were full of murderous intent. He couldn't let the police take the whip away, otherwise there would be endless troubles. Well, let this all end here. Winston raised his fists high, then dropped them hard. No. Whiplash raised his head and saw the two fists covering the sky, and cried out in despair. He never thought that such a perfect plan would end in such a tragic ending, and he didn't even see Tony's face. He is not afraid of death, but hates that Iron Man still exists in the world. He cannot accept it, absolutely cannot accept it. Boom. Winston's fists, like a pair of heavy weights, were thrown down extremely heavily. With the fists as the center of the circle, countless gully-like cracks appeared on the ground, and each crack was big enough for an adult's feet to sink into. Oh, my God, the crowd of onlookers exclaimed. Who would have thought that the gorilla, who was still paralyzed on the ground just now, would rub the whip against the ground in an instant? The strength of this fist shocked them. For ordinary people, it is estimated that it has become meat sauce. The whip rope was embedded in the ground, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Not enough. Winston's eyes shone with golden light, and his body was also entwined with electric arcs. Like a glaring King Kong, he slammed into the ground frantically as if venting his anger. Earth, debris and rocks splashed, and none of the ground under his feet was intact. The shadows of the fists are flying, and the strength is tyrannical. Perhaps this set of combos can be called the Angry Eye Vajra fist. With every punch, the ground under the fist sank a little, the whip rope was covered with blood, and the breath was weak, no different from a dead person. If it weren't for the armor protection, the whip rope's life would have been gone long ago. The expressions of the crowd were surprised. Winston was completely different before and after the rage. Winston at this time was like a wild beast. As for the whip rope, they couldn't bear to look at it, and if it was embedded in the ground, even if it didn't die, it would have to be disabled for life. Mr. Orangutan, please leave him alive. We will take him back for investigation. Several policemen got out of the car and came. Mr. Gorilla. Luo Ning ignored it, and left after punching the whip 2 or 3 times hard. Even if he didn't die, he wouldn't be able to cause any waves. The policeman grinned, staggered backwards, and stared wide-eyed. With these few punches, cows could be killed, let alone people. After the beating, Luo Ning turned around, and the policemen hurried over, saw the bloody whip, shook their heads were deformed by the beating, and even if they survived by chance, they would probably be demented. Seeing Winston's leaving back, they trembled a little. It's really my brother in society, and people don't talk harshly. Sizzle. The whip rope in the pit suddenly sparkled bright electric sparks all over the body, illuminating the pitch-black pit like daylight, and emitting a strong light outward. Even in broad daylight when the sun is just right, you can clearly see white light emerging from the pit. Quite weird. The policemen looked at each other in blank dismay, not knowing what happened, and the crowd also came and watched curiously. The lightning was dazzling, and everyone could only squint their eyes, but they couldn't see clearly what was going on with the guy who had been beaten half to death by Winston, hidden under the lightning. Luo Ning was also hooked by this considerable movement, and was puzzled to see the crazily dissipating electric current. How can there be so many coquettish routines? In the movie, I don't remember the whip rope and the ability to discharge before death. Those racers also followed the movement and left the arena after the race. When they came out, they saw the eye-catching gorilla. They even quickened their pace, and they all had expressions of disbelief. Like the girl of their dreams. Tony lamented that his life was fatal. Racing is an extremely dangerous sport. If you are not careful, you may suffer a lottery. Only after the race did you know that a racer hit the guardrail and died on the spot. How much he wished that he was the one who died. Once he closed his eyes, he could say goodbye to this world with peace of mind. How could he spend the last period of his life in extreme torment? Suffered great pain. Others will not understand. Winston isn't here for no reason, and Overwatch heroes inevitably follow danger. Since God confiscated my life, maybe it wants me to do my last bit for this world. It was rare for Tony to cheer up. His originally depressed state immediately became radiant. It would be even better if he could spray some mousse to fix his hairstyle. Harper drove over with Pepper, and they were worried about Tony's accident. The car stopped beside Tony, and Tony clapped his hands. It's just in time, give me the box. Tony, are you okay? Pepper asked worriedly. After receiving the red battle suit box from Happy, Tony twitched his mouth and raised his eyelids towards the place where Winston was. What can I do? It should be there. Pepper and Happy glanced at it, and they both opened their mouths wide, feeling deeply incredulous. They had only seen Winston on the news before, but when Winston appeared in front of them in person, they couldn't accept it for a while. Are you surprised? Tony is actually immune to this kind of thing. He is a superhero himself, and he treats Winston as a comrade in arms standing on the same front. He stood at the top of the world and looked down on all living beings. There were not many things that surprised him, only the appearance of Soldier 76 brought him a little shock, that's all. Where there are Overwatch heroes, there is danger, and where there is danger, there is me, Iron Man. Tony opened the suitcase and put it on the ground, stepped into the boots with both feet, and after a few seconds, the red and silver armor wrapped him tightly. Iron Man, now online. Those reporters also came out with Iron Man, and they couldn't stop taking pictures when they saw Winston and Iron Man. None of them were spared, each of them had the potential to become a headline. The arrival of Iron Man made the crowd looking at the pit turn their eyes away. The women were elated, and the men looked adoring. I like it, but I dare not approach it, because this man is always so domineering. Winston. Seeing Winston in reality for the first time, Tony greeted him politely. Remember to bring a bottle of peanut butter next time. The words definitely came from the heart, Winston's, not Ronan's. Whichever hero he transforms into, he has certain characteristics of the hero, such as Winston who loves peanut butter. The racers gathered around and were very curious to see the deep pit flashing with lightning. It turned out that it was because of this that no one watched the car. What happened here? It seemed that a big battle broke out. This hole was definitely made by Winston, so he didn't run away. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.